This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto was trained by Jiraiya's brother during 3 years training trip. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Jiraiya was lying in Naruto's arms, dying after they had been out of the village together for a year. Jiraiya cut up more blood and said, "Kid, you got two of them good." Jiraiya shook his head as Naruto attempted to stand up, saying, "Ero-sensei, you can't die. Hold on a little longer and I'll get you to the next village. This is it for me. I want to tell you who your father was." Jiraiya replied. Jiraiya turned to face the boy and said, "The fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato." The Sannin Jiraiya concluded by saying, "He was your dad and he'd be as proud as I am." Naruto cried because there was nothing he could do. His teacher was dead, and he was tired. He sobbed until he fainted. When Naruto saw the bright ceiling light, his eyes slowly opened and he rebelled. Naruto stood up and covered his face with his hand after adjusting his eyes to the new lighting. He noticed the clothes on the stool and put on the black gi and pants. Tying the belt around his waist, he located his satchel and fastened it to his belt, but he was unable to locate his kunai pouch. He noticed a man honing his knife skills. When he went outside, the dark-skinned man would disembowel and maim people with the knife in a way that made Naruto shudder just by looking at it. The man halted, put his knife away, and turned. Despite his elderly appearance, the man's voice was youthful. "I see you're awake. I sent a letter to your village. I told them that I'll be replacing your late sensei." What exactly happened to put Jiraiya of the Sannin in that condition? He said. Despite being short, roughly 5 feet 3, and still an inch taller than Naruto, he appeared to be a good man. His eyes were black and piercing, and his skin was tanned and scarred from much of what he thought was combat. Rewind. While practicing taijutsu on a lake with Jiraiya, Naruto attempted to find a weakness in the defense but was unsuccessful. Jiraiya abruptly stepped aside, and a kunai sped by. From the woods came 4 figures. He identified the first as a huge puppet of a scorpion, the second as a blonde man, and the third and fourth as Hoshigaki Kisame and Uchiha Itachi. Both Jiraiya and Naruto assumed fighting stances. Jiraiya wasn't sure if he was prepared to face such odds, while Naruto had made good progress in just a year. Doden. Art of Earthen Prison. Jiraiya yelled as he dashed through seals. The blonde man then plunged into the ground, where the ground crushed him. Jiraiya allowed himself to sink into the water as Naruto leapt when the scorpion puppet threw projectile weapons at the two, but Kisame put him in the art of water prison, which was his downfall. Jiraiya yelled, "Naruto! Use it!" Naruto nodded and sealed his hands together with a sly smile. Kisame used his Samahata to run Jiraiya through. "Die, old man!" Naruto yelled. "Nine Tails Phantom, release!" Nothing happened at first, but then Naruto's stomach started to leak red chakra, which eventually transformed into a massive 9-tailed fox composed entirely of chakra. The first thing that happened was that the enormous claw that slashed open Kisame's chest destroyed his prison. The second was that there was no apparent reason why the scorpion puppet exploded. When Itachi realized that his 3 teammates had been killed, he ran away without waiting to face the boy with the 9 tails wrath. Naruto dragged his instructor to the lake's edge. "Come on, sensei, you can't die on me." Flashback. Final. "I see. Then you can use the demon's chakra well. That's not the point yet. I'm going to teach you how to kill, but I will also teach you how to save lives." The man replied. He gave Naruto a smile. "You will stay here for 3 years. Train from dusk till dawn and you'll learn from every second of it." The man cracked a grin. Naruto said, "All right, did you know Ero-sensei?" Naruto stared at this, saying, "You bet I did. I'm his little brother." Naruto exclaimed, "What? You're Jiraiya's little brother?" "Yup. You're looking at the only remaining person from the Hashin lineage. The name is Hashin Kaisho. Namikaze Naruto." Naruto used his father's last name, which he would use going forward, to introduce himself. "Well then, let's get started now. I want to tell you the name of the art you'll be using. It's called Mushin no Shinryu. You will find it is different from any other combat art in existence. You will also find that even the simplest movements can kill when used right." Kaisho laughed. Naruto lunged, and when he punched, something incredible occurred. "That is the basis for this whole art movement. You can impose change on your enemy through movement. I'll show you. Attack me." After shifting his feet and letting the punch go unnoticed, Kaisho assumed a horse stance and sent Naruto sprawling with a palm strike. Naruto stood up and tried again. This time a kick. Kaisho stepped back, and when the kick came full force, he caught Naruto in a rear naked choke. "You strike when it presents itself." Naruto was pushed away by him. "You never let your enemy off your center." Naruto struck again, swearing this time, only to discover that a fist had been stuck in his stomach. Naruto threw up and fell to his knees. "Naruto, listen when I speak. You'll learn things, Kaisho replied. I am. Then prove it. Naruto got back up after Kaisho attacked him, remaining motionless after dodging the blow. Naruto felt his legs being swept from under him as his attempt to strike was blocked. Naruto stood up once more and came even closer to striking the man this time. Don't try to strike. Just do it. It should be like walking. Naruto would always come close before failing. For almost 2 months, Naruto's training proceeded in this manner. Naruto then started studying techniques and became proficient in all of them that Kaisho taught him. These replaced the blades made for this style. In the year he was using sticks. In addition, he used short sticks that were designed to resemble knives for the second year. He trained in this manner for the third year. He just used actual blades to refine what he had previously learned. His blade was black from point to pommel, and his hilt was square and featured the 9-tail fox. The swords used in this style were ninjutsus, but they were altered to be slightly shorter. The handle was about 2 centimeters shorter, but the blade was the same length along with 2 knives. He carried one on his back. From the pommel to the point, the knives were all black. Unlike katana, the handles were made of steel and had a black cord wrapped around them. The blades ended in spear points and were straight. The knife had a 15-centimeter blade and was approximately 25 centimeters long. The blades were single-edged. Every move that was practiced with these blades or barehanded was quick, accurate, and fluid. Although Naruto liked his sword, he preferred his knives. In addition to the mask and shirt that Kakashi wore, he had acquired a pair of boots and a coat, and his outfit was larger than it had been when he first started training. Naruto completely rebuilt himself in 3 years, spending that time learning taijutsu, medical jutsu, and stealth from Kaisho and ninjutsu from the 9 tails. Naruto had finally finished his training and was ready to return to the ninja world. After saying goodbye and giving him the supplies he needed to complete his journey, Kaisho left. A week later, after identifying himself, Naruto walked to the gate and leapt on top of it. Looks like nothing has changed. Yay! I'm home at last. Naruto smiled under his mask. He surveyed the village and saw that he had changed more than it had. He leapt from his perch and started to explore the streets in search of something to do. 2 voices he recognized came to him. It was the sister of Nara, Shikamaru, and Gaara. Naruto went over to them. Do I know you? Inquired Shikamaru. Naruto grinned beneath his mask and said, You should. I am after all Konoha's most unpredictable ninja. Naruto? Man, it's been so long. 4 years is indeed a long time. Tamari looked at the ninja in front of her. The eyes and hair color were correct, but everything else was off. Wait. Naruto, as in the kid that beat my brother all those years ago? Naruto? She asked. According to Shikamaru, that's the one. Shikamaru would soon come to regret saying, Let's go get some food. It's about lunchtime. You coming, Naruto? My treat? Naruto smiled. Naruto handed Tamari-san his sword and said, Hey Tamari-san, can you hold this for a second? Naruto shrugged it off and tied the sleeves of the bulky garment around his waist over his belt, saying, It's like an oven under this gi. He's got the body of a god, was what Tamari and many of the other women in the area were thinking. They kept walking despite Naruto's ignorance of the fact that the sleeveless shirt mask was actually skin tight. Shikamaru remarked, It's not that bad, Naruto, it's only like 80 out here. You didn't spend the last 3 years training in mountains with the same thing you're wearing in said 80-degree weather. Looking around, Shikamaru noticed the clothes store and remarked, Good point, seems you'll need a thinner gi. When Naruto realized he was truly broke, he asked, How much money do you have on you? Shikamaru shrugged and said, No problem, they're not that expensive anyway, but you owe me one, Naruto. Naruto nodded, and they entered the store. Sure. Naruto left wearing the thicker winter gi over his shoulder and the lighter cloth over his body. They discussed the changes in Konoha while having lunch at the Ichiraku ramen shop. Shikamaru told the teenager, It does seem, however, that you'll need to find some new housing arrangements. The entire apartment complex burned down. Naruto questioned, Do you know what happened? There was a fight between some ninja. One used a fire jutsu and set the building on fire. There was 7 casualties. None were ninja, mostly it was property damage. Both ninja who were fighting are currently serving 6 months in jail. Damn, this is going to take some work, finding a new house I mean. Shikamaru finished his bowl and said, The Hokage said that when you returned you were to report to her, so after lunch you should get over there. Naruto had already consumed 3 bowls by this point. And also remind me never to take you for lunch, only Choji eats this much. Alright. Well, I've got to go then. I'll see you later. Thanks a lot, Shikamaru. Naruto replied. Naruto then stood up and walked away, saying, It was nice seeing you again, Tamari-san. Shikamaru grinned and asked, So Tamari, you gonna go after him? Her face's flush was instant evidence that Shikamaru was correct. Tamari had never been one to succumb to her feelings, so she asked, What do you mean? I saw the way you were looking at him. I know you think he's goof looking. He's a loyal guy too. Never seen one more loyal than him. I say go for it. You're an idiot. Tamari thought about it inwardly because she had witnessed the lengths he would go to for his village and his friends. Her thought was, I'll have to find out more about this guy. Naruto ascended to the office after walking to the Hokage tower. The smirking Naruto said, Hey Tsunade-sama. The ninja caught her attention. Tsunade glanced at Naruto and said, So you're finally back, huh? It seems that Kaisho managed to knock some respect into you. She handed him a piece of paper and said, Well, as you may or may not know, you'll be needing a new house. I've got something lined up for you. The paper, a proof of ancestry, was read by Naruto. Naruto was examining the Namikaze land deed. It's only a few acres, but I've already had construction workers begin on the house. You'll have a 2-story house built on 5 acres. I don't even know what to do with that much house, said Naruto, but what about until the house is finished? You will be staying with Hitaki Kakashi. It will only be a month until your home is complete, so you won't have to put up with him for very long. Naruto laughed and said, Maybe I can get him to show up on time for once. Naruto nodded, thanked her, and departed after saying, We'll need to test your skills. Go to the Anbu headquarters. They'll direct you to the course. At last he was home. Naruto went to the Anbu headquarters after waking up early. They maintained the ANBU's secrets in a dedicated underground training area. When Naruto arrived, he followed the man who was supposed to lead him. At the moment, he found himself facing the most bizarre obstacle course he had ever seen. Naruto nodded and got started right away. You have 1 hour to complete the course and neutralize all threats within. Start when you're ready. The first object was a wall. It wasn't particularly tall or intimidating, but it was concerning that big spikes would occasionally show up to draw attention to themselves. Naruto nodded and leapt down the wall after clearing it to get a view of the entire course. He sprinted across a foot-thick log and avoided the kunai that almost hit his temple. Landing on it, he blocked the incoming Kodachi from the Anbu by drawing his sword and elbowing the man across the face, causing the mask to split. Running along, Naruto used the square hilt to help him vault over the next wall. He leapt to his feet and grabbed the bar above the wall. Glancing around, he saw that a big log protruded from the ground. Was his next challenge. He landed on it and fell rapidly. He put his sword away and pulled out his knives as 3 Anbu greeted him. Upon landing, Naruto dodged outside the blade and used the knife's butt to strike the Anbu's throat. After the first brought the sword down at an angle, the next one came at him from behind and almost struck the boy. But he also felt the knife's pommel. Naruto leaned back and punched the man in the groin after the last Anbu tried to knee him in the face. Before reaching a maze, Naruto had to navigate a number of additional obstacles. The maze had a roof and was completely dark except for a few tiny lights scattered throughout the space that provided about as much light as a match. Naruto followed his senses. He discovered nooks and crannies in the walls throughout the maze, and sometimes he came across ninjas who were waiting to attack. Naruto could still feel her presence despite the ninja's best efforts to conceal it. He stood with his eyes closed and startled the hiding Anbu with a single word. Come. The Anbu swung her tanto, which was sheathed in the end of the sword's scabbard, and attacked, leaving no space for the Kodachi. Sensing her movements, Naruto pushed his forearm against hers to reroute her arm. She was knocked unconscious to the ground by a ridge hand blow to the side of her head. With his eyes closed, Naruto proceeded through the maze, but his vision was useless because he couldn't use his eyes in a place like a jungle where darkness reigns after dusk or where mist ninjas were practicing their skills. He had learned to navigate blind. Naruto sensed the person before the Anbu did, and the next Anbu fell without realizing it. He choked the man out by covering his mouth. When he finally arrived at the end of the maze and saw that almost 10 Anbu were facing him, he prepared his sword. Naruto fell and rolled backwards when 2 Anbu attacked at once. Seeing that the ninja were still coming, he moved in one direction and quickly struck with his sword, leaving a shallow but crippling cut. The second man was knocked away with a punch. Naruto was taken by surprise when another Anbu actually struck him. The blade slid across his cheek beneath his left eye, but Naruto managed to grab the handle, pull, and neutralize the man with an uppercut to the elbow. Naruto threw the sword, and when the Anbu blocked it, he swung low and kicked the man's leg with his shin, breaking bone and muscle. The sword created a great distraction when several more suddenly appeared. Naruto used his sword to launch himself into the air by jamming it into the ground. Although many Anbu followed, they were unprepared for the knives. 2 Anbu were vanquished in the airborne battle thanks to Naruto's blades, which could cut through flesh and cloth and block swords. After striking the ground, Naruto delivered a blow to the last Anbu's chin. He hit the buzzer as he crossed the finish line after drawing his sword from the ground. 54 minutes, yelled one of the Anbu, and medics rushed to the scene to search for any injured ninja. Out of the 25, Only 5 or 6 were seriously hurt enough to require medical care. There are a few cuts and fractures, but nothing serious. Well, Naruto-san, it seems that you're of Anbu level easily. I've never seen anyone fight that efficiently. I'm Yamato, the current Anbu captain. Yamato replied. What style are you using? With wide eyes, Yamato said, Mushin number Shin Ryu. You were taught by Kaisho-sama? Well, if you want to call it that, it was more like learn or die. Naruto sighed. So when will I be starting my missions? We can start as soon as you get your mask. Regulations state that you have to wear a standardized uniform, so we'll have to get that as well, but you may be able to start soon. Naruto spent the next few hours getting his uniform sized correctly and completing paperwork. He decided that a fox mask would be suitable for him. Ironically, Naruto's favorite animal was a fox. They stood for the lower meaning of ninja arts to him, despite being smaller than its cousins the wolf and coyote. The fox used speed and cunning to survive. Naruto left the headquarters and proceeded to the Hokage's tower. He was exempt from wearing his mask until his inauguration, which was scheduled for 1 week from now. Naruto said, So Tsunade-sama, what's my first mission? Tamari will need an escort back to her village after your inauguration. We also need a ninja to stay there for 2 months. If you'd like, you could be the ambassador for Konoha, and during your 2 months there you may be able to take missions for Suna, and while here you could also take missions. Naruto said, Sounds good. With the intention of asking her about her brother, the soon-to-be Anbu said, Say, do you know where she is? I've been meaning to ask her something. She usually gets tea at Han's about now, you know, the tea house by the hot springs. Naruto said, nodding, yeah, thanks, and walked away. Before she saw Naruto enter, Tamari was content with a pretty typical routine for her days in Konoha. She kept thinking about Shikamaru's words, so you gonna go for him? She flushed, then she saw that he was approaching her. Hey Naruto-kun, I never pictured you to be one much for tea, Tamari responded. Naruto grinned beneath his mask and said, Well, Tamari-san, I do love tea. My favorites are green tea and jasmine. When Naruto got right to the point, Tamari was taken aback. I came to ask you about Gaara's well-being. He's been doing well. He's opening up a little. He's more social to a point. I think being Kazekage has sort of forced patience on him. Naruto had never imagined that Gaara would hold a position of power. He's Kazekage now? Yeah, he was the only person that could meet both the power and intelligence aspects. Naruto noticed her face flush more deeply and said, You seem to be an intelligent person, Tamari-san. She couldn't believe Naruto had just publicly praised her, saying, But Gaara's more suited for the job. I couldn't stand the position. Apparently I'm going to serve as Konoha's ambassador now. I'm supposed to be going with you to Suna next week after my formal introduction into Anbu. Tamari stared. You're going to be an Anbu? Cute and strong? She questioned the source of the thoughts. Naruto ordered himself some tea and said, Yeah, they tested me earlier, and I passed. I've got my mask and they took measurements for my uniform. Now I just wait. They continued to sit and converse. She grabbed her wallet and said, I'm sorry, but I'll have to leave because I'm supposed to meet Ino soon. After getting his own wallet, Naruto said, Don't worry, I've got it. With his mask down to sip his tea, Naruto smiled and asked, I thought you didn't have any money? That's because I just drew this out of my father's bank account. I didn't have any until I got access to my father's stuff. Naruto put the cash away. I want to go see her. It's been a while since I've surprised anyone. Who's your father? The fourth Hokage was my father. That's yet another thing you have in common with Gaara. The fourth Kazekage sealed the demon in him, and it happened to be our father. Sakura was also with her when they met with Ino. Ino looked at Naruto and said, So who's your friend Tamari? You should know him. He was on Sakura's team. And how many people have bright neon blonde hair in this village? Then it all clicked together. Naruto? Exclaimed Sakura. Naruto lowered his mask, leaning over. Tamari whispered in Ino's ear. Ino gave her a curious look and said, You should see his body. It's absolutely amazing. This is Naruto we're talking about. So ladies, what are we saying about me over here? Sakura asked, causing both girls to jump. Tamari blushed and said, Well, Tamari was commenting on your apparently amazing body. I don't think much of it. Ino commanded. Well, let's see what she was talking about. Tamari's face merely became redder as Naruto shrugged and took off his GI, witnessing two jaws drop. From within, Kyuubi remarked, Kid, it looks like you have a gift there. Ino was always uncharacteristically direct, asking, Naruto, when did you get to be so amazingly hot? Naruto replaced his GI. Well Ino, if you spend 3 years with Kaisho-sensei, then you'd understand now that I've had my fill of surprises today. I think I'll go find Kakashi. I'm supposed to stay with him for a while. Naruto got up and left. You weren't kidding, he does have an amazing body, Ino replied. They turned to Sakura, who had been surprisingly silent, and said, I told you. What? Then Sakura's face changed to a color that quickly concealed the fact that, your nose is bleeding, Sakura. Ino made fun of the girl by saying, it looks like Sakura has a slight crush on Sasuke, what about him? I do not like Naruto, not that way. Ino nodded and said, your face tells all, forehead. Ino even considered claiming him for herself, saying, better act quick, I'm sure he'll quickly become the new heartthrob of the village looking like that. They were all thinking the same thing, but none of them knew it. Though unaware of his impact on the girls, Naruto strolled to Kakashi's house. He rapped nothing once more, knocking. Nothing has changed at last. He took a step back and kicked hard, smashing the door. Then he wished he hadn't. He noticed the purple mop of hair on Kakashi's head and bare back. The Hokage says I'm supposed to live here until my house is finished, started Naruto. Naruto reached into the house and replaced the door, saying, I'll be back in a few hours. He went to buy Kakashi a brand new doorway and came back. He noticed Kakashi sitting and reading a book when he pushed the door over. Naruto held up a sealing scroll containing all the materials and said, sorry about the door, I got you a new one. He created a clone to work on the doorway. I didn't ruin anything, did I? Kakashi shrugged and replied, no, it's happened before. Anko and I are used to it. Anko? Exclaimed Naruto, the crazy snake chick? That's the one. It's a funny story how we hooked up. Actually, we went drinking, and when we woke up together the next morning, we decided to see what we'd missed, and decided to stick together. Naruto questioned him about the book and said, that's an interesting story, I guess. Well, since Jiraiya died, I can't read my usual material, plus Anko insists that she could satisfy my needs for perversion. You've started reading regular books, then it's preferable to spying on the bathhouse. It's true. So, are you interested in anyone? Not specifically. I believe I'll give that some thought once my schedule is more stable. I created Anbu. As you will be expected to complete at least 4 missions per month, Kakashi remarked. Ah, well then you probably won't have much time for ladies for a while. The majority of them will last roughly a week. Eventually, I'll figure it out. My life has always been like that, Naruto shrugged, and they carried on talking in that manner for some time. Why was Uchiha Sasuke running? Because he had caused the container of the 8 tails to go on a rampage, and now that his allies were dead, he needed to get away. He had finally gotten away, and now he was sitting alone with his sword resting on his shoulder, wondering how one person could be so strong. Sasuke stood up and started to walk. Naruto, are you like this now? He asked himself, recalling how his old teammate had always seemed to have boundless strength. Where will I go now? I've no desire to destroy Konoha anymore. It seems like it just disappeared. He sighed, exhausted from running. Naruto and his companions stood before the entire Anbu. Presenting Namikaze Naruto, the youngest Anbu since Hitaki Kakashi. He was trained by the renowned Hashin Kaisho and his older brother, the late Hashin Jiraiya, Yamato said, holding out his hand. At 16, he passed the course in 54 minutes with only minor injuries. Naruto has made significant progress in a short period of time. As Yamato handed Naruto his mask, everyone applauded and started chanting speeches. Naruto shrugged. And he'll help us accomplish much more. There isn't much to say about it. This is just another step toward becoming Hokage, and I couldn't have done it without my friends, who supported me throughout the entire process. When Sensei died, I was present. He killed one of the Akatsuki members. Since they travel in pairs, the other man managed to get away, but not before killing Jiraiya. Naruto made up this report to hide the fact that he had discovered a method to use more than 4 tails of the 9 tails chakra. I want to put an end to it because I've witnessed a lot of deaths. That's all, folks. Naruto shrugged. I'll kill if that means it, but I also want to save lives and bring peace. Everyone applauded. Then there was a party, and the ninja were all celebrating their new comrade. In reality, only 150 new Anbu joined, which was not even a fifth of the total ninja population of about 4,000. The city had a population of 5,000, and many of the civilians who were still there were frequently ineligible or unwilling to be ninja. Only Iruka, Shikamaru, and Naruto were sober by the end of the party, and the majority of attendees were plastered. How in God's name are you still sober after downing 5 bottles, Naruto? Shikamaru inquired. Naruto tapped his stomach and said, I have a very special ability, and it burns off all the alcohol. Well, not all of it, roughly 98% of it, the fox corrected. You have roughly the same amount of sake in your system as 2 cups. I see. Shikamaru was aware of the 9 tails, but he felt it would be too much trouble to bring it up. Sue, how is your relationship with Temari going? Naruto. Shikamaru chuckled as the sake escaped his nostrils. Nothing is happening between us. That burned, Naruto said, wiping his nose. She said, he seems like a great guy, he's loyal, and he's got a great body. It's unfortunate. I think you should go for it. Shikamaru was acting as a matchmaker for one reason. He could sleep instead of having to spend his time escorting the woman around the village. Shikamaru drank his tea and Naruto remarked, I think you're lying. Naruto, have I ever lied to you? Shikamaru was an honest person, so Naruto shrugged, it would be too troublesome. As the group gradually dispersed, Naruto was the last to depart. He felt something as he was walking down the street and turned to see a man standing there. Hi. Sasuke, have you come to take me out in my own house? Naruto noticed that his clothes were in ruins and that he had been severely beaten. Sasuke replied, no, I want to come home. The first S-class missing ninja in history to return home was Uchiha Sasuke. Come on. We're spending today at the Uchiha residence. Naruto turned and they proceeded to the Uchiha manor after saying, Anko is at Kakashi's house. What's keeping you with Kakashi? Sasuke asked. Naruto explained the situation. I see. Okay, let's visit my house. Have you ever murdered your sibling? Yes, I did. Rebuilding my clan is my new objective and to construct it properly. Sasuke clarified the reality of the Uchiha massacre. They then proceeded to what Naruto was referring to as his overnight residence. Well then, we'll take you to go see Tsunade-sama tomorrow afternoon. When morning finally arrived, Naruto got ready and went to find Sasuke, who was sitting in the courtyard sipping tea. Naruto pointed to the Kusanagi and remarked, that's a nifty toy you've got there. You appear to possess some new toys of your own. Are you now Anbu? Naruto flicked the mask atop his head and said, as of yesterday night, I begin my duties tomorrow. Being the ambassador for Konoha is my first task. Naruto smiled and said, what do you think you'll do if Tsunade allows you to return to your ninja duties? I'm supposed to be in Suna for 3 months. Sasuke started, I think I'll take the Anbu test. Let's go get some breakfast, just so you don't show up too badly, he said with a sly smile. They went in search of breakfast. I'm starved, Sasuke said, changing into an outfit that was very similar to Naruto's, but without the mask and with a small Uchiha crest on the back beneath the collar, as well as ninja sandals in place of boots. They made the decision to visit Tsunade after breakfast. When someone knocked on the door, Tsunade said, come in. As they entered, Naruto said, hey Tsunade-sama, I found our lost kitten. Sasuke entered, grinning. Yo, where did you find him? Then, he caught me on the way back from the party, Naruto sighed. Remind me to never let Temari have alcohol again. But what should we do with him? I say we test him and align him with whatever group needs him. But you realize that he was a missing ninja for nearly 3 years. Technically so is Rin, Naruto grinned. I guess I didn't realize she was still alive. In your opinion, what would Kakashi say if he discovered your little secret? Tsunade scowled at the boy and said, I propose that we allow him to rejoin the force. All right, but I'll hold you accountable if he does anything foolish tomorrow. I'll have him take the test or you could put him to the test. Yes, Naruto glanced at his long-lost friend and said, let's go test Sasuke. It's been a long time since I had a good match. Anyhow, in a few hours, I will return with a report. After waving them away, Tsunade started working on her paperwork, which mostly consisted of mission reports and an application from Kakashi to rejoin the Anbu force. Alright, don't hurt yourself, you're supposed to leave tomorrow. Sasuke was fascinated and proceeded cautiously, activating his Sharingan as a precaution and instantly regretting it. Naruto and Sasuke were standing face to face, approximately 10 feet apart, with Naruto's hands resting in front of him as though they were on a cane and his feet shoulder-width apart. He deactivated his clan's eyes and saw hundreds of Phantom Naruto moving to attack from all sides. How can he move so many ways from such a relaxed-looking stance? He asked. Sasuke pulled out his sword and launched an assault. That's when it happened. Sasuke was on his back with a knife against his throat after his sword was abruptly flung from his grasp. Sasuke took the initiative once more and Naruto ducked the blade, but as he attempted an elbow strike, Sasuke kneed him in the chin. Got you? Naruto stepped back, letting Sasuke stand up. After taking the blow and rolling back, Naruto performed a back handspring to increase his distance and drew his sword, standing with his feet shoulder-width apart in a bladed stance. It's my turn. Sasuke was barely able to block Naruto's advance before the blow sent him reeling. After removing the sword, Naruto proceeded with his attack, taking Sasuke in one arm while sheathing his own. Sasuke fought against Naruto's strong arm, and when they stood up, Sasuke smiled. Naruto then sheathed his sword and used his other arm to grab Sasuke's shoulder and neck, flipping him onto the ground and starting to choke him with the rear naked choke. Although you're skilled at hand-to-hand combat, how is your jutsu? Art of the fireball? Sasuke said. Flashing through seals, Sasuke directed the tiny sun towards Naruto. Naruto created his own seals using Art of Ice Spikes. After dodging the ball, Sasuke leapt away as numerous ice spires rose from the ground, each attempting to impale him from a different angle. Dragon Fire Art. With his Art of Water Shield, Naruto deflected Sasuke's massive Dragon of Fire attack. Allowing him to attack close once more, he grabbed the first arm as it came hurtling toward his head, then used the other to slam Sasuke into the ground. He got to his feet and helped the ninja up, saying, "I'd say at least a high Junin level. About my skill level, I win, Sasuke. But you beat me. That is due to two factors. The first is that I move faster than you do. Secondly, your elemental affinities are the opposite of mine. Fire and lightning are opposed by wind and water." I see. Sasuke glanced to his side and saw that they had drawn a crowd, which included several Anbu, Iruka, and several of the original Genin teams from their year, including Kakashi, Temari, and Tsunade. "So, what are your thoughts, Tsunade-sama?" Naruto turned to face his boss. "I believe you made the right observation. You're departing tomorrow, so go pack your belongings." Tsunade waved him away, saying, "I'll handle Sasuke's paperwork." Naruto made the decision to go get tea first. Kyuubi accused him, "You're just going to see that Temari girl." "No, I'm not. I want some tea, and just to get some fresh air, I want to get away from you. I understand what goes on inside your head." Boy, Naruto shrugged, defeated. "So what? I can't stop thinking about what Shikamaru said." Naruto then severed the fox's head, saying, "I have to settle matters." Temari was seated at her usual table when he got there. "Hi, Naruto, after your show, are you coming for some tea? You were also present. Everyone present was able to identify your chakra. Are you aware of how much you were generating?" "It was quite a lot," Naruto said, shaking his head. "Well, I didn't realize so." Naruto shrugged, then turned to face the girl as he ordered his tea. "So Shikamaru has been telling me some rather strange things lately. Would you mind clearing them up for me?" "Yes, what was it?" If what he was discussing was what she was thinking, things were going to get awkward very quickly, Temari said, feeling her heart race. Temari had picked that moment to have a cup of tea, which was a bad idea because it was now all over Naruto. "Well, he was saying you had certain feelings for me, and that you said I had a great ass." "What?" Temari yelled. So it wasn't accurate. Naruto was feeling a little let down. Temari was now a shade of red that is typically only associated with tomatoes and some flowers. Naruto smirked and raised an eyebrow. "It was, but I hadn't expected him to say anything to you about it." "I see. Well then, allow me to take you to dinner tonight." "Very smooth, Naruto," Temari thought. "Sure, come pick me up at 7? Naruto paid himself before she could put some money on the table. "Sounds good. Well, I've got to go then." After giving him a cheek kiss and leaving, she said, "Thank you, Naruto-kun." From his cage, the Kyuubi snarled, "Smooth kid, real smooth." Naruto just sat and drank his tea, saying, "Shut up, fox." After taking a shower, getting dressed, and making reservations at a restaurant earlier that day, Naruto went to fetch Temari a few hours later. He was dressed in a black jacket and tie, black slacks, and a white dress shirt that he had not tucked into his pants. He had a telescopic nightstick in his right pocket, but he had forgotten his headband and all of his weapons when extended. It measured roughly 65 centimeters in length and was composed of steel, just in case he needed to use more than just his bare hands to fight. He reached Temari's present residence, a home designed to house visitors to the countryside. Temari was the only one lodged there at the moment. The blonde patiently waited and knocked on the door. Naruto had to take a literal step back when Temari responded. Instead of her typical ninja sandals, the sand ninja wore straw sandals and a tabi, and she wore a white kimono with bamboo leaves and gold trim tied at the waist. Naruto looked at the girl in front of him and said, "Temari, you really dress up when you dress up. That kimono could not have been less than 50,000 ryu. You like it? Gaara actually got it for me as a gift. It's imported from Snow Country, and I think it was closer to 75,000. Temari examined it. "You're not looking so bad yourself. Kaisho-sensei insisted I buy some formal clothes when I got back. Now I'm glad I did." Naruto laughed. "Shall we go?" They ate, conversed, and engaged in other activities that are typically done on a first date at the restaurant. Naruto had the uncanny feeling that he was being followed as he brought her home. Naruto grinned and said, "Well, this is your stop. I guess I'll be seeing you tomorrow." However, he took her by the wrist and kissed her before she entered. As he noticed the flush on her face, Naruto smiled and said, "Now we're set. Good night, Temari-chan." She turned and went inside, saying, Gee, good night, Naruto-kun. When Naruto turned around and pulled out his nightstick after walking home with his hands in his pockets, he noticed Sasuke. Smooth Dobi. Naruto dropped his nightstick and said, "You're the second person to say that to me today." Naruto smiled and said, "And it never gets any less annoying, let's go." Temari was leaning against the front door of her home, flushed. Did that just happen? She thought, mentally reliving the entire incident. I hope he's not killed by Gaara. After shaking her head, she left for bed. Naruto was accustomed to waking up at the crack of dawn, so he put on his black clothes, grabbed his sword and other weapons, packed his supplies and equipment, and made plans to meet Temari at her home. After deciding that a bath would be pleasant, Temari decided to treat herself before preparing for her trip. Naruto decided to use his well-practiced stealth skills. After arriving at the house and finding no one answering the door, he climbed to the second floor and crept into a window before landing quietly on the floor with caution. He moved across the room and into the hallway. For a moment, Temari thought she heard a window screech open, but she brushed it off as a hawk or bird screeching. Carefully opening each door in the hallway, Naruto discovered empty rooms or, occasionally, a closet, an additional bathroom, and a door leading to the attic. For a brief moment, Temari's senses were heightened by something she sensed. She dried herself quickly, wrapped her towel around herself, and picked up the kunai that was on the counter. Having a kunai almost skewer his face as he opened a door was not one of the things Naruto had anticipated happening. The only thing that saved his face was his well-honed avoidance skills, but his face mask was less fortunate. "What are you doing here, Naruto?" she yelled, her face flushed, though she wasn't sure if she was embarrassed or angry. To demonstrate his point, Naruto took out his pocket watch and said, "We were supposed to leave at 7, it's 7:30. "Are you serious?" she cried as she hurried back into the bathroom, drained the bathtub, and fled to her cubicle. Naruto just strolled around the house, making one stop at her door. Knowing that there were a lot of doors here, he spoke loudly and said, "You know, you should really keep your hair down, it looks much better." About 30 minutes later, Temari came out of her room carrying her fan and pack. She wore her hair up in the typical ponytail. Temari glared at him, deciding that she was upset that he had interrupted her. "It keeps my hair out of my face to wear it like this." They had begun to make their way to the exit when they asked, "Ever think of doing just one?" They carried on their joke about Temari's hair for a considerable amount of time before saying, "Actually, no." Sasuke wasn't pleased. The answer to the question of why he wasn't happy was quite straightforward. He was despised by all of his former classmates. Sakura and Naruto were the exception. In fact, Naruto had made sure he was reintegrated into the Konoha ninja ranks. Sakura was a completely different story, one that he could not readily describe. Flashback. Sasuke's Anbu inauguration. Except for Naruto, who had departed for Sanagakure, Sasuke stood in front of the entire Anbu rank. He was certain he had never seen the others, but there were a number of shinobi he had never met, including one he knew as Neji and another as Shikamaru. He had been asked to get a speech ready. "All of you know who I am, so I'm not going to introduce myself. I have my teacher to thank for being here. I'd always been told then to never abandon my teammates, but I did. I left in search of power to kill my brother. I did, and when I learned the truth, I also learned something else. My duty should have been to my village. I should have never left, but I made the mistake of leaving, and I'm incredibly lucky to have been found by Naruto and not someone else. I have him to thank for being up here, but he isn't around. I know you don't trust me, but I'll earn it, and I'll do things right this time." But there was no cheer because they were all against him. Bowing, he walked away. He drank sake alone while perched atop the Hokage monument. He drank another cup and said, "Naruto, you're lucky, you have that unbreakable will of yours." Sakura emerged from the surrounding trees and said, "But you've got yours as well. The fact that you're even back says something about that you were simply lost. We missed you. Kakashi-sensei and I." She took the bottle from him and sat down beside him. "He was at my inauguration. He was glaring at me. But he did miss you. He would always say how the team just wasn't right anymore, even though Naruto's only been back for about 2 weeks. He was gone on considerably better terms, I bet." He pulled out a second bottle and resumed his drinking. "I ran him through the chest when I left. He was taken in by a Sanin, and then his brother. Don't dwell on what happened. We've got to have a celebration for your return, and if you drink this stuff you'll end up addicted like Tsunade Shisho." She returned with the second bottle. He handed her the glass he had just poured and said, "It's not bad. I drink it to help me sleep." He shrugged and took the drink, saying, "I'm not gonna drink it." Sakura was expecting him to speak again when he pushed the liquid into her mouth with a kiss. At first, she pushed him away. That was a dirty trick. He grinned and planted another kiss on her, saying, "Ninjutsu is all about deception." Sakura put her arms around his neck and kissed him more deeply once more. They broke the kiss. "May I have my sake back?" "No." She repeated his earlier trick and took a drink from the bottle before taking one of her own. "I assumed you wouldn't have any alcohol." He grinned, and they had drinks together before the night finally brought them back to Sasuke's house and into his bed. "I changed my mind." Flashback. Final. When Sasuke woke up, she sat up, saw his bare, scarred chest, and recalled the events of the previous night. Sakura decided that waking up in Sasuke's arm was one of the most pleasant places she'd put herself in, even though the throbbing hangover wasn't. Sasuke held his head up and sat up, saying, "I hope you're feeling better than I am, Sakura." They got up, dressed, and walked very slowly to the Hokage Tower, saying, "If we go find Tsunade Shisho, she has this medication that stops hangovers." Tsunade grinned when she saw Sasuke and her red-eyed apprentice enter. "You managed to get her to drink at last. That's amazing," Tsunade said to Sasuke, reaching into her desk and pulling out a bottle of her hangover-killing tonic. After just a few minutes of using it, it seemed as though they had never had one before. "Anyway, I came to ask about my duties now. As of right now, you will be required to remain on city patrols for the first few months." Tsunade started going through her papers. "Actually, I've got a mission you can do." He handed him the paper. "Sakura is being sent to the land of snow to train medics, and she'll need a bodyguard." Sasuke nodded. "We'll get you running some real missions when Naruto returns. You're the ideal candidate for the position." Sasuke had no hesitation in accepting. "Good. You guys will leave in 1 week, and the mission will last 6 months." They made camp early and traveled quickly, covering the 40 clicks to the Fire Country border in a half-day. Naruto was training with his knives, and Temari watched as he moved from one kata position to another with a grace that was more than fluid. He moved like he was made of air. She was both captivated and terrified by the way he moved the knives around, striking, killing and maiming blows at the enemy that she could almost see herself. Then he stopped. She was hidden, but he turned and looked directly at her, saying, "You can quit spying on me, Temari-chan. Come out here, I'll show you something for close quarters fighting." She came out and approached him, saying, "Attack me." Without hesitation, he stepped aside, and with a bump of his leg, she was left sprawled in the grass. She sat up, completely shocked. What was that? That served as Mushin no Shinryu's foundation. Imposed change by movement. She got up and tried again, but Naruto moved this time and stayed behind her while she attempted to follow him. A simple tap on the shoulder knocked her flat. "How are things going for you?" He helped her up this time, and she attempted to use the momentum to throw him off, but he shifted and knocked her to the ground once more. Temari didn't realize that this was exactly how Naruto's first days of training with his sensei went. "I keep you on my center, and off of yours. You realize that you're a bastard?" When he helped her up this time, there were no assaults and no blonde girl flat on her back. "It'll help you, knowing some unarmed combat," he grinned. "Is it correct to assume that you will teach me how to manipulate people in the same way that you do?" "I barely touched you. I didn't throw you." The Uzumaki grinned beneath his mask. "You're a very mean person." Temari sighed. "I've never seen you use any of those moves like that kata. They were always really small and precise, not those big flowing moves in the kata." "That's because each of those moves is used in real-world situations." He observed Temari's expression as she took in the information. "It's the same with my sword. I could slash someone to bits with it, or just cut their clothes with the same move. Every time you saw me move, I could have done it narrower or bigger, depending on what the attack or defense takes." "What happens if they're nude? Then you can't cut their clothing." This took Naruto completely by surprise. Temari scowled as he responded so rapidly, "Well, then I'd just cut them into pieces." After some time of joking around, they made the decision to prepare dinner and call it a night. They left for the border the following day. "So, are you really going to brave the desert in a solid black outfit? The temperature outside is nearly 120 degrees. Sometimes he had to remind himself that he was wearing a mask. "Don't worry about it, I have a plan." "I hope you're not frying yourself with that plan." "I would rather not have to tell you that." It took all day to traverse the vast expanse of land, and Naruto had observed that the trees had become much thinner and that the temperature had increased by roughly 5 degrees as they moved further west, so they set up camp when they arrived at the edge of river country. At last arriving at the desert's edge, Temari grinned broadly at her native country's landscape. "So, Mr. Movement, what are your plans?" She turned to face the ninja calmly. He reached into his backpack and took out a small scroll that she knew was a sealing scroll. He opened it to reveal a white cloak. He put down his pack and put on the white cloak, which was basically a hooded trench coat with armholes, saying, "This is my plan. A white cloak to wear over my black clothes." "You're a genius, Naruto. Don't your people wear those white robes?" There was no beating him, Tamari sighed. Some do, mostly the older folk. The distance to Sanagakure no Sato was 70 clicks, and they traveled 25 clicks in those first 3 hours of light. 2. It was just past sunrise, so they had to take advantage of the cold. 1. They did manage to travel a considerable distance before the sun's strong rays started to pound the sand and shrubbery. Well anyway, let's get going so we can cover some distance before it gets too hot. They reached the village before the sun started painting the sky with the colors of the sunset, but their speed of travel slowed significantly once the temperature surpassed 60 degrees and swiftly soared into the hundreds. Tamari couldn't help but smile at the sight of her home village, and her expression was similar to Naruto's just a short while earlier. She extended her arms toward the village and said, "Welcome Naruto, to the village hidden in the sand." When our blonde friend finished his set of push-ups on one hand, he switched to the other. Tamari was curious when she noticed the shirtless ninja standing in their living room on his hand. "How many of those have you completed, Naruto?" As Kankuro was still removing his equipment from the guest room, he was currently sleeping in the living room. 500 on my left hand, I'm at 100 on my right. Tamari suddenly understood that Naruto was a very muscular person, and that if he performed 1,000 push-ups every morning, that would explain everything. After completing his morning workouts, Naruto put on a tight-fitting tank top and black fingerless gloves, strapped on his sword and knives, put on the tabi boots he had acquired, and announced that he was leaving. He also took a thin gray GI. Naruto had already met some of the village's ninja and was offered lunch by a brazen kunoichi, but he had no real plans to go anywhere. He just wanted to get a sense of the place. A girl appeared as Naruto was exploring the village's streets to get a sense of its layout. "Greetings, I'm Nami. Would you be interested in joining me for lunch?" He noticed a group of girls laughing a distance away, and the girl was flushed. He grinned and turned to leave, saying, "I'm sorry, Nami, but I've actually got somewhere to be, maybe another time." As of yet, he had found the village's library, numerous eateries, and the weapons store, which was a very fascinating experience for Naruto. He didn't accept because he was certain that the girl's friends had set her up to it, as well as because he wasn't particularly hungry and still had more exploring to do. The clerk approached Naruto as he entered the weapons shop, taking in everything he could in one swift motion. "Good morning. Boy, you don't appear to be from this area. How may I assist you?" Despite his advanced age, the clerk's broad shoulders, powerful wrists, and powerful forearms gave the impression that he had not yet slowed down. "What revealed me? Did the black do it?" Naruto gave his head a scratch. The man then noticed the sword on his back and said, "Nope, it's the skin. You're not tan enough to have been here long. Can I see that blade?" "Sure." He removed the blade with expert precision, turned it over, and gave it to the man. "Handle first." The man examined the pommel cap, the handle, the hilt, and the blade with the trained eyes that only a weaponsmith could possess. "A personalized weapon. It is made by the Kintori brothers, some of the best smiths in the Fire Country, and is of a quality that most ninja cannot afford. My teacher had it made for me as a gift." "Who gave you the lesson?" "Hashin Kaisho." The man had a shocked look on his face. "You practice the renowned Mushin no Shinryu?" "Yes, I am." He grinned. "How do you relate to our style?" "Kaisho's master saved my father from a group of mercenaries when I was young. They outnumbered him 25 to 1, and he beat all of them with a dango skewer." Naruto took back his sword and remarked, "It sounds like something from an old martial arts film." "I know, consider it a thanks to your master's master, but anything you want from here is half off." "I don't know if I can accept that." Naruto bowed when he said, "I insist, if ever you need anything, just let me know." "Thank you, sir. Call me Musashi, Kuretsun Musashi." After taking a brief glance around, Naruto said, "Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto." After a short while, Naruto discovered the training grounds, which were a valley with sheer cliffs on 3 sides. He was now watching a group of people he thought were genin, hidden in a small cave on the high cliff, and he noticed that they were practicing a 2-on-1 sparring. One of the group, a small orange-haired boy, was the victim of a 2-person attack. His 2 opponents were 2 boys, one smaller than the other. In the initial attack, the bigger boy appeared to have only received rudimentary martial arts training. The orange-haired boy ducked under the shot, delivered a right hook to the boy's midsection, came up outside the boy's arm, and plowed his left hand into the boy's temple. He then turned and barely avoided the first blow from his second opponent, kicked the boy's front leg, and then hit him with a barrage of body blows that momentarily stunned the boy. Finally regaining his composure, the first opponent attempted to attack his ostensibly unaware opponent, but was unsuccessful when he attempted a roundhouse kick and had his back leg kicked out from under him. His other target was eliminated by a pivot and a powerful straight kick. The orange-haired boy ducked low and grabbed the attacking arm. As the first boy started his next assault attempt, he slammed the boy down with a pull and a hip shift, then pretended to strike the boy in the throat with a knife. At this point, Naruto made the decision to come out and inspected the three boys. "Who taught you to be a good fighter?" "My brother was raised in the eastern jungles, where Muay Thai was a popular style. I learned from him." The orange-haired one smiled. The boys all bowed as Naruto said, "My name's Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. I'm Konoha's ambassador." The boy with the orange hair introduced himself as Kuranesu John. The taller of the two black-haired boys said, "Naga Torimaru." Naruto grinned as the smaller one said, "Ryuga Ashiru. Where is your sensei?" "Then," Torimaru said, sadly glancing at the ground, "he was Kia." Naruto grinned, thinking that this would be the best choice he had ever made. "Well, then, until you guys are assigned a new one, I'll be training you guys while I'm in town." "Okay, so the first thing I have to say is to you two, your movement is way off." "Torimaru, you might as well have sent a messenger because every single move you made was so widely telegraphed. Your moves are nice and tight, and it seemed like you had a lot of power, but you have no speed, and that is your weakness." With a final glance at John, he said, "You are very fast. You remind me of a friend I have back in Konoha, but your style seems to require more power than you currently possess to reach its true potential." John countered, "But I took both of them down." The boy stepped on Naruto's knee and launched his other leg like a missile, which was the strangest thing John had ever seen. Naruto, whose style taught him a lot about avoiding, barely managed to dodge the boy's knee. "Attack me. Don't hold back. Attack me like you're trying to hurt me." John did. Naruto simply brushed aside a jab, then a left straight punch. Suddenly, John felt himself headed straight for the ground. He quickly extended his hands, barely managing to catch himself, and attempted to kick Naruto, who caught the foot. He finished with a strong front kick to the boy's solar plexus. Naruto addressed the boy who was struggling to breathe, saying, "See, you lack power. A larger, more skilled ninja could destroy, not to mention if I drew my sword, knives, or used a jutsu. So, how will you collaborate with each of us to strengthen our areas of weakness?" Ashiru inquired. After deciding he had completed his task, Naruto turned and walked away, saying, "Simple, I want you to come back here tomorrow, and I'll be here with a means of training all of you." Upon his return to the house, he discovered Gaara painting, Temari reading, and Kankuro fiddling with a puppet. "What did you do today, then?" Temari inquired. "I met the weaponsmith of the village, turned down some girl Nami for a date, and agreed to train a group of genin who lost their teacher." Taking a flathead screwdriver instead of pliers, Kankuro remarked, "Sounds like you had some fun." "Yes, I did. They were a promising group. However, I do require a few items." Naruto sat down and said, "A big punching bag, some cotton rope, some gravity seals, and some candles." "What precisely do you intend to instruct them in?" Gaara said, halting his painting for a moment. "Well, one of them is not particularly strong, but he is very good at Muay Thai. Another lacks speed but is incredibly strong, and the third telegraphs his movements badly." All of a sudden, everything became clear. Naruto suddenly had an idea. "Say, Temari, could you fetch me dinner?" Naruto felt compelled to take Temari to dinner, even though it was a lie. "I haven't eaten much today, and I didn't find much for restaurants." The Nine Tails felt the need to occasionally say things like, "You have a thing for her kid." Had Naruto just asked her out? Temari blushed behind her back and said, "Yeah, I'll come, let me go get change." Although Naruto kept his knives carefully hidden on his person, he felt compelled to leave his sword behind. Temari's usual battle kimono had been replaced by a black silken one embroidered with bamboo and golden leaf patterns, and she wore a golden silk obi. Naruto smiled and said, "Just perfect." They then went looking for a place to eat, and the dinner went so well that words cannot express how happy they were. After that, they wandered around talking about nothing in particular. "Naruto, you were a loud-mouthed punk the last time I saw you. What has changed so drastically?" Naruto looked away, the memories still lingering in his mind, and Temari reached out and took his hand. "My sensei was killed on a training trip, and I was taken in and trained by his brother after I passed out due to chakra exhaustion, killing the people who killed my sensei. It must still be very painful. However, I have faith that the pain will eventually subside. It's likely that your sensei would prefer that people celebrate his life and remember him rather than lamenting his passing." Naruto acknowledged to himself that she had a point, so let's listen to his personality and be content. He could always inspire me and was a cheerful, somewhat sardonic man. Hours passed while they had located a park to sit and enjoy each other's company. As if I'd be completely worn out, ready to just die right there, and then he'd say something and I'd be training again. Naruto trailed off, still talking about his former sensei. After spending some time in the park, they decided it would be best to head home, and Temari promised to give him a gift before they entered. "I had a great time tonight, Naruto, thanks." She kissed him and left him on the porch, keeping his hand over his lips. After gathering all his supplies, Naruto headed to the training field to meet his trainees, and by the time he arrived, his 3 students were already there. Naruto smiled and said, "I'm glad to see that you're enthusiastic to train." He took out several scrolls and opened a large, heavy bag that weighed about 200 pounds and contained candles, rope, a pair of posts, and small, eye-catching mitts. Torimaru remarked, "You have a strange method of training, sensei. The heavy bag is for John, the candles for Ashiru, and the rope for you." He set them to work doing basic exercises like clapping push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and a run that he'd claimed would be short, but ended up being more than 5 miles. When they were all out of breath, Naruto began on his personal training with each of them. With John, he simply gave him a certain distance to push the bag with blows, and a limited number of blows to do it with. He had to push the bag 50 feet, and could only hit the bag 200 times. This would force him to focus on power rather than the number of times he hit. For Torimaru, the rope served its purpose that to bind his hands at a certain length, forcing him to keep his moves tight. The striking mitts were also for his training. The candles were for Ashiru's training. He would lash out with strikes, using only the wind from his blows to extinguish the flames. Then he would go to one of Naruto's clones and hit the training mitts a set number of times within a time limit. Naruto, in the course of his trainings, had learned to manipulate the clones for all purposes. He could have them take blows that were not fatal and survive. He could make them explode, they could perform jutsu, and many other things. Naruto observed his students as they trained. John was struggling to move the 200-pound bag, which required his blows to move the bag 3 inches each time in order to meet his quota. At first, it didn't seem like a problem, but after about 60 blows, he started to tire and his blows became weaker and weaker. However, when he reached about 120, he started attacking with renewed vigor, and after reaching less than half the distance, he started attacking the bag with powerful blows that he had no energy to deal with. The 50-foot mark was reached at 185 blows. Good, now try and manage the same distance in only 180 strikes. Are you aware of how difficult this is? Exhausted, John said. The first blow knocked the heavy bag back 10 feet, the second was leaning on closer to 15 feet, the third was also 15, and finally the third was the same distance. Naruto showed off the power concealed in his slender frame by saying, "Yes, I can manage 50 feet in just 2 blows, but I'll show you 4. I practiced like this a whole lot when I was with my teacher. Additionally, I made use of a heavier bag that was attached to a bungee cord." Naruto said, "I'd start from the beginning again if I didn't do it quickly enough." John's expression was one of utter shock as he realized how powerful he must be. "How much more weight?" "The weight is tripled when I did this. I was permitted to remove the gravity seals that I had worn during the regular training." Naruto smiled. Naruto, who now understood what it was like to be Jiraiya, began training with renewed vigor once more. Naruto then held up his mid-encased hands, allowing Torimaru to feel the sensation of hitting an actual object instead of air, and it was then that he realized that even though his moves were tighter, he still telegraphed them. After a moment of reflection, he produced a pair of sticks and gave one to the boy. "Hit the stick. Only use your front arm, and don't move anything above your shoulder." As Torimaru cocked the stick back, Naruto gripped it firmly. "Stop, stop, do it like this." Naruto bent at the elbow and snapped the stick out of the boy's hand. The boy tried again, but the movement felt strange. After some time, Naruto saw that the boy was holding the stick handle. "The stick is simply an extension of your range, instead of a strike." Naruto showed off a left hook. "A punch or kick, it's all about keeping the strikes close to your center. Where you're most balanced." Torimaru absorbed the knowledge in a similar way to how sponges absorb water. He had a clone grasp the stick and had Torimaru strike it at various distances and occasionally while moving. Ashiru was having the most difficulties. He was undoubtedly a strong boy, but he was slower than the others and was unable to put out the fire. Naruto held up the mitts and allowed Ashiru to strike them, saying, "Come on, hit these, let's make you faster. You know your problem? You're trying to hit as hard as before, but faster than before, attack lighter and faster, working the strength up as you progress." Ashiru's hits became lighter, but they also became noticeably faster, just like that. Other than that, he had not encountered any significant difficulties. He continued to work the mitts, and although the blows didn't get noticeably stronger, he maintained that quick pace at around noon. They all took a lunch break before continuing their training for a little while longer. An Anbu arrived on the grounds carrying a letter from Konoha. Greetings, Naruto. Sasuke has changed a lot. Did you know that he finally got Sakura to drink sake? Anyway, how are you doing, Naruto? I heard that you and Tamari went on a date. How was that? Well, there isn't much news, you've only been gone a week. Right back. I want to hear about your life. As soon as Sasuke and Sakura left for the land of snow on the morning of the day you'll be receiving this. With a signature, Doodle, Tsunade. He tucked the letter away, wanting to save his response for later. Naruto grinned, happy that someone was thinking of him despite his absence from the village. His surrogate team kept up their training until around 5 o'clock in the evening, when they finally took a break for the day. I want you to be here so we can train every morning. It'll be from 8 to lunchtime. They all said, yes sensei. Naruto threw the boys out and went to his present residence, only to discover that his little stack of belongings beside the couch had vanished. Where are my belongings? Naruto inquired. It's in your room. Kankuro moved his stuff out of the guest room, Tamari said, and Naruto nodded before entering the room to find his belongings neatly arranged against the wall. After taking a shower, he came out to the living room wearing shorts and a t-shirt. Where dinner was waiting for him, Gaara entered, putting down the oversized hat that all Kage wear, and they ate dinner together while exchanging stories about their days. Away from the land of snow, it was a clear day, but the cold weather was having an effect on Sasuke and Sakura, who had been walking all day as the sun was setting. They were just on the edge of the land of snow, and it was already about 5 degrees. Sasuke was dressed in the cold weather version of an Anbu outfit, which consists of a long-sleeved shirt instead of a sleeveless, skin-tight one with a thick cloak over his vest and boots instead of sandals. Sakura had also changed her outfit, wearing a red sweater and black pants and a cloak. How far do you believe we've come? Sasuke had always been a good judge of distance, so he said, only a few miles, maybe 4 or 5. They walked in silence until Sakura broke it. Hey Sasuke, tell me why you decided to return home. I felt like a missing nin, and I didn't belong. Sakura's eyes dropped to the ground as Sasuke's breath misted in front of him. I wanted to be back home, where I could stop running, she thought, but instead of feeling depressed, she focused on getting to the village without freezing. Sasuke sighed as he noticed tension growing between them over time. You're depressed, what's not right? She grinned and said, I'm not sad, I'm fine. He gave her a serious look. Even though I haven't seen you in a while, Sakura, I still know you. What's the matter? All right, you can't be tricked, can you? Sasuke, I'm sorry you didn't return to visit me. I sincerely hoped I was the reason you came back. However, I assumed that was asking for too much. You participated in it, Naruto, too, with you guys. I had family once more. I truly enjoyed being there with you guys, even though I didn't show it, he said. So, you treated me like family? Now, I almost wish I had thought that. Sakura blushed as he smirked over his shoulder and said, no, Naruto was like family. You were always kind of annoying, but I could tell that you weren't another fangirl. When it came to it, you fought, tooth and nail for us. And now you've grown up, into the most beautiful kunoichi I've ever met. Why, you truly believe I'm attractive? Her face was starting to warm up. Yes, Sakura, I do. He laughed as he suddenly saw a picture of his brother. Where's the tough girl that I've been with most of this trip? You would have to be blind and gay not to see how beautiful you are. She frowned at him and then grinned, saying, shut up. So, how do you think the land of snow will be like? We will be walking downhill for approximately 1/4 of a mile to reach the location, which is in a deep valley. There are many trees there. Have you been there? Since there isn't a ninja village there, they frequently post missions that are open to vagrants. A large number of them pay well. So, why will we be training medics? Because a ninja village is going to be constructed when the prince succeeds the elderly king. He desires to establish his own ninja village. Oh, what do you think will happen with that? The man who will rule the village is incredibly devoted and strong. I once fought him, but he was simply too strong, and he won by a wide margin. Is the final, powerful Uchiha conceding? There are still Uchiha like Madara, so I'm not the last one. With an air of seriousness, Sasuke declared. He's the real leader of the Akatsuki. And yes, I'm admitting defeat. Sasuke grinned. I've never been able to do that before. They kept joking around, mostly to distract themselves from the icy cold that was constantly gnawing at their limbs. When they eventually arrived at the valley's edge, they looked down to see the village strewn about inside. Sasuke was correct. The village had a natural defense that deterred large numbers of people. An army would find it challenging to pass through the densely packed trees. Sanagakure. After 1 month, John's fighting style changed from the traditional Muay Thai fighting style to Toriyameru no Kobushi-do, or the way of the intercepting fist. After Naruto closely watched the 3 students, instead of using his left hand, he led with his right. His straight punches from his backhand were also strong, and his jabs were incredibly quick while maintaining some force. He was a formidable presence with his knees and kicks. After all three agreed that they would prefer a full day of training, they had begun. The person who had previously struggled with his overall style, Torimaru, had favored a kodachi and simple taijutsu. Ashiru had also opted for the intercepting fist style, which seemed to suit him well due to its strong build and fast, precise blows. Naruto was jingling the two bells in his pocket at the moment. Naruto grinned and said, "Okay, for this test, I want you to get these bells." On the other side of his genin test, Naruto grinned. The bells were tucked into his belt. "But there's only 2 bells there, correct?" Begin. Within seconds, all 3 had vanished. They were faster than he was at that age, he grinned. Naruto prepared himself by stretching his arms and wrists and cracking his neck. "So John, you're the first to come? I'd figured it would have been Ashiru. He's the one that seems most likely to attack first." John rushed forward, only to be struck by a lightning-fast jab. "I want to see how strong you really are." "Strength doesn't matter, speed and accuracy do," he stated. He sidestepped several blows before intervening to elbow the younger boy, saying, "Because strength comes with those." That rock-hard elbow sent John reeling. He was further knocked back by the subsequent sidekick. How powerful was Naruto? John regained his composure and wits and realized that the blonde man was, in fact, too quick to defeat alone. "You'll never beat me alone. None of you." His friends were essential to him. He started to run, but his full range of motion was limited by the bruises that were developing on his ribs. He discovered Torimaru and Ashiru discussing and attempting to devise a plan. Torimaru remarked, "Looks like you already had a row with him. We concluded that we're not fighting, we're ambushing to steal the bells." He continued, "We're fighting a stronger force. Remember the academy? If you're fighting a bigger force that's guarding your objective, then you need to ambush and deceive," the teenager replied. Ashiru remarks, "That's brilliant, but how would we ambush him?" "We'll need bait and booby traps. I was thinking a snare or a pitfall." "Snares would be the best bet. We get him stuck and then steal the bells." Torimaru said, "Who's up for being bait?" Nobody put up their hands. Then he hopped down and they went about their plans, saying, "Fine, I guess it's me." Naruto was seated in the center of their training area, meditating. If his memory serves him correctly, he saw Torimaru emerge from a small valley that branched out and led to a small desert oasis. Naruto stood and turned to face his pupil. "You're the smartest in the group. What caused you to come out alone?" He produced a pair of nunchaku and said, "I wanted to test myself." He stood with them, the rods and chain behind him, one hand raised, holding one of the metal rods, the other beneath his left elbow. Without using his sticks, Naruto advanced, avoiding the metal nunchaku and landing quick blows that knocked the teenager back with each one. Naruto would occasionally be struck, but the blows were incomparable to anything he had ever experienced. Naruto was drawn into the tiny valley as he continued to push and Torimaru continued to retreat. Naruto stepped forward, feeling the sand beneath him vanish, saw the stakes below, and then felt himself jerk upward as Torimaru performed a backflip to avoid a kick. Then Ashiru appeared and took both of the bells. He started pulling himself up the thin rope, cutting it, and swinging to safety. "I see, so Torimaru was the bait, while you retrieved the bells after I fell into your trap." He touched down close to them. He turned to face his students and remarked, "You all pass. Also, I have some news for you. Gaara has found a teacher for you. He'll be meeting you here tomorrow at 8. This is our last training session." They were all looking disappointed. "I know you'll do well. This guy is tough. His name's Hyuga Ren, an ninjutsu specialist." Naruto laughed. After that, he took his bells and left. Naruto had some tea and some ramen for lunch. He noticed something that didn't seem to belong while he was making his way home. A man, wearing clothing that wasn't typical in this area. He had the appearance of a samurai, which was unusual in this place. He cautiously walked up to the man, stepped back, kicked the man's knee out from behind, and had to dodge a katana as he attempted to grab the man's shoulder. "Who are you and what are you doing here? Are you Uzumaki Naruto?" "If I am." The man hurried at him, his sword acting as a scalpel, accurate to the last detail. With each blow Naruto avoided aimed at a critical area. After avoiding the blow that would have cut his throat, he leaned back and kicked up, landing the ball of his foot in the man's groin. He then grabbed the man's head, elbowed him, and took him in an arm lock, locking his other arm with one leg and his knee on his spine. "WHO sent you?" He tugged at the man's arm, pushing his face deeper into the scorching sand. With his free hand, Naruto reached into his GI and pulled out a scroll that contained a set of bonds. He bound the man's hands and picked him up, as well as his sword, saying, "You'll never get me to talk like this. Even if you do, they'll send more." His GI was cut during the brief altercation, and he cursed his luck. Gaara was not happy when Naruto threw a samurai on his floor because he disliked surprises. What is this, Uzumaki? Gaara smirked and closed his eyes. This man attacked me in town. He won't answer to me. I'd figure you could persuade him to do otherwise. Do you know who I am, mercenary? The man asked. Nodding, he nodded once more and said, you know that I could crush your entire body? The man crushed the man's feet in sand and said, but I won't, I'll start with your feet. Tell us what we want to know. The man choked out, and never. Gaara pushed the sand upward, swallowing the man's calves. This time he screamed in pain. Gaara gave him another chance to speak, but to no avail. He moved to the man's groin from his knees. Fine. Fine. I'll speak. I'm a member of a group in the land of snow. We received intelligence that Konoha ninja were coming, and that Uzumaki was friends with them. We were sent to dispatch him at the same time as they were sent to dispatch the other two. Do you understand that you just attacked an incredibly dangerous person? Asked Gaara. Gaara glanced at Naruto, who took his sword and stabbed the man in the head, and the Uchiha is no pushover either. The Haruno girl, if memory serves, was also trained by a member of the Sannin. Your friends will be dead in a matter of time. We have to alert Tsunade. Naruto, go to the snow village. I'll send one of my own with you. In order to avoid carrying a full pack, Naruto packed his belongings and sealed them all in a scroll, so there wasn't much of it when he left his room. Temari was already dressed and prepared to leave. You're coming with me? Yeah, I'm the best from this village. Gaara said. Your Anbu would be behind us, only by a day or so. Naruto went to the door, but Kankuro stopped him, saying, okay, then, let's go. He said, be careful, both of you, and walked away. Naruto nodded and walked out the door, saying, we will. Without a doubt, Sasuke was exhausted. His senses warned him that a sword was approaching, so he dodged it and struck out with a back fist. Satisfied that he had hit something, he collapsed his arm, stepping in and knocking his target back. Sasuke pulled out his Chikudo, the Kusanagi, and asked, what do you want? The man simply attacked with a smirk. Sakura almost missed the person trying to sneak up on her because she was so focused on Sasuke. She turned around and punched. Her chakra-powered blows creating a vacuum behind her arm. She saw the man, but he was quick, wearing a mask that looked like what she had always thought a demon looked like, a long, black and white shirt with horizontal stripes, and black gloves on his hands. He also wore a blue sleeveless GI. The man in the mask said, you Konoha ninja will drive our business out of this city. We can't have that. He took his fighting stance, which is a fairly standard Kempo stance, and declared, we of the Oniwabanshu will extinguish you. Sakura raised her hands as well. Understanding that she was fighting for her life, she pondered the purpose of the stripes on his arms. After taking a step back to what she thought was a safe distance, she was punched in the face. What on earth was that? Her own fist found its mark on the man's chin as she got to her feet and lunged at him. The man was brandishing a pair of kodachi, and Sasuke ducked the first one, then the second, before blocking the first one once more with his sword aimed at the stunned opponent. He pushed the blade away and punched him in the stomach. His reward was to bite into the man's leg with his blade. I see that your skill with that blade isn't exaggerated, Uchiha, but you have yet to see the Shinomori style. He unfastened his cloak to reveal that he was dressed in his Anbu uniform and said, I have more tricks up my sleeve, I'm just getting warmed up. The sword was placed on his shoulder. His Sharingan was bright, with 3 tomos marked on each eye. Come on, if you want to fight, this is the best place to come. In a single glance, he vanished, his sword crashing down on the ninja ahead. The older man blocked with his sword. He pushed chakra into the blade, cutting the kodachi clean through and leaving a bloody trail down the man's chest, saying, you choose defense, which is the wrong choice. Sakura ducked another blow after realizing that the stripes gave her opponent's arms a shorter appearance. It was an easy trick, but a cunning one, and she had determined that her only options were to dodge down and sideways. She pushed the blow away and punched the man back, then followed up with a knee to the sternum. She received a crack in return. She didn't intend to stop there, though, and kept attacking the man in the mask, gaining ground with each kick and punch until she finally used chakra to charge a punch and unleash all of that power on his face, shattering the mask and the bones beneath it. What she saw made her gasp. The man still had one sword, but Sasuke had cut his kodachi. Tell me, Uchiha, why return? He recalled his friends and said, because it's my home, and if you dare impede on my mission, I'll kill you. He hurried the man once more, putting more chakra into his sword. After blocking the sword, the ninja received a boot to the face and an electrical current as payment. Sasuke ran the man through after creating his chidori. After pushing the man off his arm after feeling him go limp, he discovered Sakura behind him, healing her broken nose. So, what do you think this was all about? It seems that they're mercenaries that are angry about the snow wanting to build their own ninja village, and us helping. Well, we need to report this. There's likely to be more, he responded. Sasuke cleaned the blood from his sword in hand, sheathed it, and said, let's get to the village, and send a letter back home. They then proceeded to the village. Unaware that Naruto, who was expected to arrive in the coming days, had experienced a similar situation, Sasuke had sent his letter. With a goal in mind, Naruto and Temari didn't care about stopping, even though they had traveled across Fire Country in a day. Much faster than most people they could see the land of snow. By the end of the third day, 2 bodies were discovered when they descended into the valley. With its face smashed in, Naruto turned to face the other body and said, this is Sasuke's work here, which means... Temari nodded and followed Naruto's words. These were the guys that were sent after them. Come on, we need to catch up with them. She appeared anxious. You were merely dreaming. Temari is a powerful Naruto. It's still unsettling to see her like that, though he kept his thoughts to himself. Naruto kept them close at hand in case they came up. After an hour, that thought finally wore him down by gnawing at him. Temari, something's wrong. There's nothing wrong, Naruto. Lies. Don't give me that. I know that something's wrong. Tell me. We're a team. We help each other. She turned to look at him. To be honest, he wasn't sure. Those bodies were enemies. Are we walking into another war here, Naruto? You could never tell them, though. Probably. Tsunade's sending in more soldiers, so time will tell. But it's seeming more and more like this is a war. Naruto took a breath. Naruto looked at the snow-covered path and remarked, it also seems like there's something we don't know. Let's see what Sasuke and Sakura, as well as the daimyo, know. Okay, also, Naruto couldn't identify it, but this Temari didn't sound like the one he had known in the past. What is it, Temari? Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, I think that I've developed feelings for a person. Does this certain person happen to have blonde hair and blue eyes? She put her arms around his neck and blushed, saying, as well as a godly body. He put his arms around her waist and gently pressed his lips against hers, saying, well, Temari, I think that this certain person has feelings for you as well. After several long seconds, he broke the kiss. Naruto grinned and they concluded their snowy journey, saying, let's finish our discussion of this topic later, in the hotel. Naruto first peered in when Sasuke saw the ninja enter. Then he entered and asked, no one's naked in here, are they? Looking at the Uchiha, he said, okay, Temari, it's safe, only back a month and they can't wait to get rid of you. He laughed. Having been cleaning his sword, Sasuke said, yeah, but you weren't much better. I believe you were in Konoha for only a week or 2 before they shipped you off. He grinned and said, yeah, but they can't handle me there. He didn't try to avoid the slap in the face that came. He deserved it. It's the same thing with Temari. They can't figure out what to do with her in Suna, but Tsunade doesn't want to keep her either. But I guess it's safe to say that I'm the same way. Gaara kicked my ass out of Suna after only a month. Temari shook her head and said, Naruto, you don't know when to quit, do you? Naruto blithely acknowledged, not a clue. He rolled his shoulders and let go of his pack. He took off his bulky GI, revealing trousers underneath. In reality, they had 2 rooms. So how are we going to divide the rooms? Sasuke arched an eyebrow and asked, shouldn't it be obvious? Nope, I think that you and Sakura would like some privacy. I know you came back for her. He grinned at Temari. Plus Temari and I have a conversation to finish. Sasuke shrugged and said, okay, I suppose you have control over the room distribution. Say, where is the cherry? Shower. Using a mallet and all. Sasuke reinserted his blade into the handle and pushed the pin back in. When he was satisfied that he had done a good job, he checked his work and put his sword away. Naruto gestured to the side they were on, where a divider divided the sleeping area in half. Ah, okay then, I'll let you 2 to your devices. I take it ours is the room is this half? He asked. Sasuke gave a nod. Then I'm going to sleep. Naruto took off his boots and other gear, placing his knives on top of the nightstand and his sword against it. Then the blonde ninja closed the partition. Care to join me? He asked, observing the shutter seals that rendered each room soundproof on its own. Temari gladly complied, taking off all of her extra clothing, leaving only a t-shirt and tight shorts. Only his boxers were worn by Naruto. Sasuke lay on the ground and attempted to peek beneath the partition, but was unsuccessful. There might have been a tiny opening close to the wall. Sakura exited the shower wearing a yukata. What are you doing, Sasuke? Sakura shrugged and grabbed the shutter's handle, jerking it open to reveal a pair of blondes dozing in each other's arms. I want to know what they're doing over there, but I can't hear anything. Sakura had to acknowledge that she was a little envious of Temari since he had someone who would voluntarily and publicly declare his love for her, even if the relationship was only beginning to develop into something that could be referred to as such. There, now close it up. And come on, we need to be up early. Sasuke appeared almost hesitant to express love. I'll teach him that expressing love is acceptable. She quickly felt Sasuke's weight beside her as she laid down in the bed. When morning finally arrived, Naruto was the first to awaken, kissing Temari gently on the cheek and dressing in a white ninja shozoku that was similar to his old one. He then proceeded to wake Sakura and Sasuke. Time for retribution for last night. He grinned, grabbing the sides of the bed. He violently jerked the entire mattress over, causing both occupants to scream. Sakura's voice exclaimed, "Naruto, I'm going to kill you," she exclaimed as she stood up and struck Naruto. He has a stone-like body. She could feel her hand throbbing from beneath the bed. Sasuke's head with raven hair protruded. Sasuke got up, removed his shirt from the back of a chair, put it on again, and turned back to face Naruto. "Naruto, you're going to regret that." Sasuke pulled his mask over his face, making his voice sound muffled, and said, "We're supposed to be going to go train medics today. Why don't you survey the regular forces here, see what they're useful for? Make sure that they're prepared for a ninja attack. The guys that I met today seemed pretty talented, but still around a higher Chunin level, someone who had a basic grasp of knowledge, but not quite enough experience." He subsequently attacked Temari as Sakura and Sasuke departed. Naruto stood there, wondering what the Uchiha had said. "You keep him from killing anyone. He doesn't seem to think that you're capable of controlling yourself," Temari said. Naruto strapped his sword and knives on and said, "No, he knows I can, it's just that he wants to mess with me. Playing mind games is a hobby of his." His hite dangled around his neck, his hair hung down onto his forehead, and he positioned his mask so that it covered the majority of his face but left his eyes and forehead exposed. "Your hair looks better down," Temari recalled Naruto's previous statement. "Keep it that way." Naruto stated, "You have to do it if you want me to." Temari flicked one of her ponytails and sighed in dissatisfaction. "Let's go talk to the daimyo." If the swords beside him didn't tell it, the daimyo's aura did. He was a man of great stature, with a strong neck, arms, and torso. He was undoubtedly of samurai ancestry. "Sir, we'd like to assess your forces. What do you have ready at any given moment?" replied Naruto. "There are 100 infantrymen guarding the city at any one time. 50 more can be ready at the sound of a war trumpet. 45 cavalry are available, and 45 ninja are also available when the trumpet sounds. However, we have 100 or so who have pledged loyalty to us, many of whom do missions to bring in funds for our military purposes." The daimyo continued. "Your force is well sized for such a small country," said Naruto. The man looked extremely apprehensive and his voice became quiet. "What of this Oniwabanshu? I've heard that they reside in your country?" he asked. "You see, they moved their headquarters here around a year ago, when the Sound Village fell. Their force is composed of ninja, around 300 or so. Our plan, once your friend has finished training our medics, was to attack their headquarters." Naruto gave an understanding nod. "Well, if I may, sir, I'd like to take your 5 best ninja with me to attack the village covertly." The man sighed. "Only 7 against 300? The words, "Not even the Sannin could hope for those odds," caused Naruto's eyes to harden. His calm returned. They would level an entire village with their power. He said, "I was trained by Jiraiya of the Sannin, and his elder brother, Hashin Kaisho." Naruto stated, "It's not a matter of destroying their entire forces, just compromising their strongholds, setting fires in their barracks, poisoning their water supply, and assassinating the head of the forces." Naruto stated, "Temari and I could do it alone if we had to, but I was hoping that we could use some of your men, to even the odds a little more." "You were trained by both of the Hashin brothers? That you found the self-imposed hermit, Kaisho, is no small feat in and of itself. Very well, I'll have my 5 best brought here. When they return from their missions you may take them for your mission." Naruto bows and departs. They located a soba stand and ate there for their next meal. "Temari, how much do you know about blade work?" The girl with the sandy hair looked at him and said, "Little, I know the basics, but not much more than that." "Why?" Naruto said, "Because, I will show you what I know." "How?" "We've only got a short amount of time to train. I can't learn much so quickly." "I know a way too. It's something I learned with Jiraiya. It's called a hyperbolic time jutsu. It takes every hour, and turns it into a month, every day into 2 years. That's what it will seem like anyway. Your mind will retain the knowledge, but your body won't feel the aging effect. That must use a lot of chakra." Naruto described the jutsu, saying, "It does. I've never used it for more than a day. It's a genjutsu. Very similar to Tsukuyomi." The idea of your body sleeping while your mind learned seemed to completely amaze Temari. Sakura and Sasuke were seated in front of 25 ninjas who had just graduated from the academy. Sakura was holding her folder, and a board was to her left. They all raised their hands when she said, "Tell me, each of you applied for medic training, but how many of you are really ready? She started adhering pictures, each of which featured a more horrifyingly disfigured body. A number of them dropped their hands and asked, "How about now?" She pointed to the 5 who let their hands fall and said, "Each of you leave. The rest, you have stomachs, but you will need to learn how to deal with the stresses of being a triage medic." She stopped. "On the field, we decide who lives and dies." Sasuke whispered, "Kept calling it murder when I did it. We help those we can, and those who aren't dead yet. We don't take sides, we don't ask questions. We just help them." My bodyguard here watched as his entire family was murdered before his eyes. By his older brother no less. This is the type of place he'll be going to. The shitholes of the world. She grinned. She saw 20 young faces turn pale and said, "You'll be bringing people back from hell." Naruto had come up with a plan, albeit a cunning one that combined a number of cunning elements into a single, overarching scheme. He played a part in his overall plan, which included arson, contaminating the water supply, massive explosions, and an army of clones brandishing knives. He had a map of the area, a map of the base, a blueprint for a water pipe, and even a map that displayed the terrain, and he had spent the entire week sitting at his desk worrying over the smallest detail. After noticing that he had only consumed ramen for the entire week, Tamari made the decision that he should eat actual food. She placed a dish of teriyaki and some sake on the table. His eyes were ringed with dark circles. Can't drink, must plan. Naruto picked up the chopsticks in his left hand and started eating the chicken. Naruto. At least eat the chicken. It's not healthy to sit in one place for so long and not eat some good food. I'll make some tea if you won't drink the sake. He stopped and studied the written notes, the maps, the reports, everything. I need a break, Tamari. Do you think you could give me a massage? I'm feeling kind of tense. Naruto got up. She glared at him and said, "My lower half too, please. My legs have never been so stiff." That's not what I meant. But if you really want to. Naruto put his hands up and ducked the hand. Backing up slowly, she looked at him, her face still attached to a letter that perfectly enunciated the verb. Glare. I was joking, Tamari, but please? A massage would feel great. He went to lay down and said, "Okay, we'll have a drink later." She looked at his clothing, which was easy to take off. It's uncomfortable to get a massage with your shirt on. If I'm giving you a full body massage, then you're going to need to lose the pants too. Naruto grinned and complied, saying, "You just want to see me naked?" Tamari had always loved his body and now shared his bed on a regular basis. He was lying on the bed now. Face down, she started kneading his shoulders and upper back while straddling his lower back. She was far too anxious and had never considered that no one in his village, possibly with the exception of Hyuga Hinata, would even consider touching him. Have you ever had a massage, Naruto? Your muscles are like stone. Don't answer that one. I'm afraid I won't like the answer. Then, Naruto grinned over his shoulder and said, "Why do you do your work as a ninja? You can't enjoy assassinating people. We should learn from what hurts us as much as what we love." He paused, groaning with pleasure, and said, "And no, but if this is what I'm looking forward to, then I might have to stay up for a week straight more often." Around this time, Sasuke and Sakura entered. "Instead of torturing enemy ninja, we should massage information out of them. It would work just as well, much less messy." Both had an odd look on their faces. The blonde man grinned and said, "Yeah, it's totally what it looks like." Sakura had been teaching the students basic medical first aid, and Sasuke sat in his room, rolling his shoulders. Sakura turned to face him. At that moment she approached him, straddling his lap, and put her hands on his shoulders, saying, "You know, I happened to see that both of them were enjoying it. I could help you with those stiff shoulders." "How much?" Sasuke raised an eyebrow, which is his equivalent of saying, "But it's gonna cost you." "You have to?" she whispered, bringing her lips to his ear. "Give me a full body massage." His gaze expanded. Sakura nodded. "You mean? All of you?" Her tone was seductive as she said, "Every single inch of me." A gentle smile spread across Sasuke's face. "I think I can manage that one." He then sat back and relished the sensation of his sore muscles being worked by the hands. Weekends are a blessing. In the morning, Sasuke and Naruto were both cooking breakfast for the 4 of them while wearing only their pants. "So?" inquired Naruto. "So what?" Sasuke was aware of Naruto's desires. He noticed the eyebrow rise and asked, "How was it?" "You know what I'm asking about. Sakura is a very persuasive girl, and I happen to know that she has a bit of a perverted streak. Let me guess, full body massage?" Sasuke's eyes widened in disbelief. "Good job, Sasuke. You've done the deed. Just remember that you are technically her bodyguard." With his trademark smirk, Sasuke asked, "So how was it, Naruto?" Naruto drank his tea and said, "It was good. I didn't think it would be all that the old bastard said it would be, but it was. Almost wish I had a cigarette, just to seal the deal." The blonde laughed. Sasuke laughed too, saying, "Naruto, your sense of humor is weird. That sounds like something a Suma would do." "It's just something Jiraiya would do. Whenever he came home late at night, he'd have this pipe that he smoked. I asked why, and he told me that it made the night perfect." Sasuke observed the grief in Naruto's eyes. "But I don't like the smell of tobacco, so I don't think I could do it." He grinned. They laid out the cups, silverware, and all of the food before waking the female members of their team, saying, "Let's go wake the girls as soon as we're done setting the table." Sakura was taken aback to see such a delicious breakfast before her, but Temari's present condition went far beyond simple astonishment and was something far more. She questioned, "Naruto, did you cook all of this?" He claimed that Sasuke had given him some assistance. "Okay then." She gave him a kiss. She approached Sasuke and kissed him on the cheek, saying, "Thank you." Sakura said, "Thank you as well, Sasuke-kun." Her face was a mix of bewilderment and rage at the blonde for kissing her boyfriend. That was unusual. Naruto started by saying, "Not in Suna there is a tradition, or practice. After certain activities of the night, a man makes breakfast for his lover, and if she's content with the breakfast, and previously mentioned activities, then she'll give the man a kiss." Sakura flushed heavily, and her face showed her confusion once more. Naruto nodded and asked, "So you're saying that you, and her, did these activities? Then why did she kiss Sasuke?" "He helped cook the breakfast." "Sakura, you should give Sasuke a kiss, or else I might have to steal him from you." Temari cracked a sly grin. Sakura approached the man with the raven hair and pressed her lips to his. Temari grinned at their flushes and asked, "So you guys had sex too?" "And no, I mean maybe." Sakura stumbled for words. Sasuke said, "Yes, Temari-chan, we did." Sakura just sat down, looking indignant, and said, "And Naruto told me of this practice when he woke me up, that's why I helped." Sasuke was not sure if he heard eagerness in her voice or the opposite. "Well, since you kissed my boyfriend, does that mean I have to kiss Naruto?" he asked. Temari gave a shrug. She paused and turned to face Naruto. "It's up to you, or him I guess. If he decides it's worth whatever you might do to him, then he might claim it. I should also say that the kiss is meant to be a bond of trust second only to that of marriage." Sakura sighed. "Are you saying that you basically just engaged yourself to Sasuke?" As she drank her tea, she said, "No, I'm saying that he is the only one I trust with my life other than Naruto." She grinned again and said, "If you don't want to kiss Naruto, that's fine, it's just more for me." Sakura didn't take humiliation well. She bit her bottom lip and glanced at Naruto with a look of uncertainty on her face. "Naruto has saved my life. Why should I not entrust my life to him?" She pondered. "Because you fear that you won't be able to control yourself around him." Her mentality's other half said, the half that never questioned her emotions, "No. Sasuke is mine, and I will always be loyal to him." She left her position and approached Naruto, who got up and gave her a gentle peck on the lips before returning to his breakfast. Sasuke calmly said, "Naruto, Temari-chan kissed my cheek. That wasn't fair." He acknowledged that it was a bit cunning. Naruto spoke swiftly and with a faintly triumphant tone, "All is fair in love and war, my friend. Besides, now we're all family this way, we'll have more of a bond, something more than just the fact that we were all assigned to a mission to keep us together." Sakura, whose cheeks were still flushed, said, "Stop talking, it's starting to make sense." After breakfast, everything returned to normal as Naruto worked on his plans. Temari served as his second brain and occasionally brought him tea and snacks, and Sakura and Sasuke were training medics at the nearby academy building. Their first goal would be to poison the water supply. Naruto had instructed that a particular mixture be prepared, which would be poured into the supply as the attack got underway. This would kill the enemy long after the invasion was over and leave no evidence of poisoning. After that, they would have to use melting snow since they would no longer be able to use the water in the lines. At that point, they would launch their second goal, sending in ninja to murder the men who had been told to fetch water. Following that, they would pose as the men who were instructed to gather, go around setting off explosives in their place, and then they would eject the main building and demolish the second building that was parallel to the first. The armory was the second structure. Destroying a force's armory is the best way to impede it. The third and final step was to allow the enemy to follow them, killing them as they followed a group of people. 3 of them were killed from behind, and Naruto's clones attacked them from the sides, forcing them to flee back to their base, which was destroyed by the explosive notes placed throughout the building. A total of 145 enemy casualties was a successful mission, and the 2-week operation proceeded exactly as planned. At the moment, Naruto and Temari were seated with the daimyo in the meeting room. "You're saying that your mission went off without a hitch? Are you sure you did as much damage as you say you have? I want to make sure that I won't be hearing about the Oniwabanshu again after I wipe them out." "Yes, sir. I stayed behind and ran some recon. The ninja at the remains of the fortress said that we cost them as many lives and we also destroyed almost all of their weapons. They are now limited to their personal effects, consisting mostly of kunai and a few ninjutsu. To emphasize his point, the daimyo pressed his fist into his palm. Good. You have done well. When your friend Haruno Sakura is done training those medics in 9 months, we will attack their base and we will annihilate them, they said. After 9 months, Sakura glanced at the 25 medics in her graduating class. Many of them had washed out and lacked the will, and some lacked the chakra reserves, or the control required to be medics. She had been given 9 months to train them, which was a little longer than the 8 months required for Konoha medic training, but it was as good as they could be. She congratulated them on their graduation, made them all take the medic's oath, and informed them that they were now ninjas and that they were in charge of the lives of anyone they treated. Sakura, Sasuke, and Temari were seated next to Naruto. They had been called back to Konoha. Their mission was complete, and they would not be taking part in the attack that the Land of Snow was planning. Temari had requested that Naruto and she return to Konoha. The blonde girl's only defense was, "The place is growing on me." Gaara had given her permission to leave, allowing Naruto to return to his own house. The two blonde lovers had to take a very sandy detour because Sasuke and Sakura had returned before them and were going straight to Konoha. They were able to unwind to some degree, which was possibly the best time they had had in a long time. As he passed a clearing, Naruto stopped. A huge lake with deep, blue water caught his attention. As he turned to his left, he grinned as he turned around. As fall approached, it would be their final opportunity to swim in pleasant weather. "Let's take a swim, it'll be refreshing." After spending some time swimming in the refreshing water, they had a satisfying lunch and eventually resumed their journey. As he sipped his sake, Sasuke took in the view of the village he had previously abandoned. He was thinking about a lot of things there. "I betrayed them, and they just let me come home. I left," gored Naruto. "And they let me come home. Why? Is it because I killed Itachi? Is it because I never really did anything against Konoha?" Sasuke murmured aloud. When Sasuke heard the voice, his eyes widened. "It's because you're important to them." Orochimaru's voice sounded muffled in Sasuke's mind, as if his own conscience were fighting Orochimaru's. "That's right, Sasuke-kun. You didn't think you could avoid me forever, did you? You did absorb me after all," Orochimaru said. Sasuke said, "Get out of my head," as the Sanin's voice boomed with laughter. The final Uchiha heard, "You don't think I can't silence you?" Sasuke heard a chorus of laughter echoing in his head. "You can never silence the voices. And in another 3 years, your body will die. This is the cost of absorbing another's soul," said Sasuke. Sasuke never understood the repercussions of using the Sanin's own prohibited jutsu against him. "I'll find a way to get you out of me," he said. "I must." Without a word, Sasuke added. Once more, Orochimaru's voice shouted, "Boy, you don't know what you're dealing with. Your eyes and their trickery are the sole reason that you even survived." The snake man's laughter was the only sound audible. "Your mind is weak. But in time, your mind will fade, and mine will take control of your body." Sasuke shook the sake bottle in circles in silence. A second, empty bottle was beside him. "It's only a hallucination brought on by alcohol." After giving it some thought, Sasuke stood shakily and walked slowly down the mountain into the village where he lived. Sasuke had a hangover when he woke up the following morning because he was too sick to move around much. Rather, he summoned Orochimaru when there was no response. The coughing started until he was certain his lungs would burst from his chest. Sasuke coughed and wheezed. Naruto had been up for several hours because he had a mission today. He was supposed to accompany a group of collectors of medicinal herbs on their hunt for a herb that was supposed to treat a horrible respiratory ailment. The intended duration of the mission was 3 weeks, and it would take them 5 days to reach the Arctic conditions high in a mountain range in the most remote parts of Earth country. The plant was supposed to grow on a particular mountain, which was also the highest mountain on the continent and the largest mountain in that range. They would look for the plant and then return. He was currently packing his sleeping bag, pants, his warmest cloak, his thickest GI, and a face cover that was longer and thicker than a scarf and could cover his entire head. He discovered Temari awake on his couch as he was leaving. She got up with a bundle in her hands and said, "Oh, your door was open, so I came in." Naruto took the bundle and said, "I got you this. It's a coat." It was a fairly heavy trench coat with a belt attached around the waist and lining made of a woolen, blanket-like material that was detachable so it could be worn in warmer climates. "I know you're going to an Arctic environment, and I'll be damned if I let you freeze to death." Naruto gave her a kiss. Naruto put the coat in his backpack and sealed it away, saying, "Thank you, Temari. You shouldn't be sorry that you came over unannounced. You're welcome here anytime. I'm sure it'll come in handy. Can you check on Sasuke for me? I saw him staggering around last night. He was really drunk. Just make sure he's okay." As he walked away, she gave him another kiss and said, I'll do that. Make sure you come back in one piece. When Naruto entered the mission hall to meet his clients, he kept his mask on his face. A man named Tora Okin was big and strong. He was easily half as tall as he was, standing at a remarkable 7 feet, and he was carrying a big red backpack. He was wearing gray pants, and a younger man who was considerably thinner and shorter was standing next to him like Naruto. He was wiry, slender, and powerful. Nishin Arima was his name. Arima was dressed in a long-sleeved shirt, black pants, and a GI. Even though he carried a sizable pack, Okin's enormous one still seemed insignificant. They were both wearing boots. "This is Arima, my adopted son and apprentice," the bigger man said in a deep baritone. "I'm Okin, the apothecary that sent for your services." Naruto bowed slightly and said, "You can call me Kitsune. I'm the one that was selected to escort you." In order to remain professional and avoid revealing any of his habits, Naruto had to remain as formal as possible. "Let's leave quickly, while it's still early. I trust that you both can keep a fast pace." If someone said, "So there I was right," or something similar, an expert tracker might be able to locate them. Naruto concentrated on maintaining his cool-headedness. They left the mission hall behind. Temari stood outside and said, "Sasuke's not doing well. He's been coughing up blood all morning apparently, and vomiting too." Okin's expression was shocked. Naruto turned to face him and said, "That sounds like consumption, the same disease that the plant we're hunting for cures." Naruto nodded, and they made their way to the Uchiha compound. "If we could see your friend, I could diagnose him, and perhaps if it is consumption, Lady Tsunade could use some of the plant to cure your friend." Sasuke was still hacking up blood while lying in bed with a bloody cloth to his mouth. At that moment, he heard Temari once more. The Uchiha was aware that she was referring to Naruto when she said, "Sasuke, I brought someone that you might like to see, but he's at work." Following some investigation, it was concluded that Sasuke had every symptom of consumption. Naruto, Okin, and Arima set out once more. The road led directly to Iwagakure, making it easy to navigate their northwest bearing. Naruto knew that he looked like his father, a man who was not well liked in the Iwa village, but they would still walk through the village. He was wearing a hooded garment at the moment, and since his hair was an odd color, it was best for him to hide it. His mask was his ultimate safety. He was an ANBU from Konoha who was escorting an apothecary and his apprentice, and that is all anyone would know about him. Naruto remained silent during the first day, which they spent primarily on the main road, while Arima explained that he was going to gather as much of the plant as possible to make streptomycin, the only known treatment for consumption. A landslide had blocked the main road on the second day of their journey, forcing them to take a second, much smaller route. Workers from a nearby village were busy clearing rocks, dirt, and other debris from the road. Naruto took note of it in his mind, but he didn't give it much thought. Sometimes there were earthquakes, and they would destroy things due to their complete dependence on the earth from which they were packed. Roads were a common target for landslides and earthquakes. On the third day, they were close to Iwa, where a sizable portion of the wall had collapsed. A number of workers were rapidly repairing the wall using strong jutsu. This raised some questions for Naruto. Why would a ninja village be situated on or close to a fault line? Something must be happening that he was unable to comprehend. He would discover the village, acquire some last-minute gear, possibly hear a good story of two, and hopefully learn something about the mountains he was entering. However, they needed to find a place to stay for the night. First, they discovered it at a traveler's inn, which offered them both good places to find information and a good rate for accommodation. In an attempt to learn more about the mountains, the plant, and the illness his friend was suffering from, Naruto spent that night alone in the village. He obtained his information from an elderly, wrinkly mountain resident in a tiny tea house. Wearing a kimono, a hat, a knife concealed beneath each boot, and a cloak draped over his shoulders, Naruto entered the tea house dressed as a traveling swordsman. Naruto said to the woman who had brought him his tea, "I'm going up into the mountains north of here where I've heard I can find a plant to cure consumption. I was hoping you could help me find someone to talk to about that." She directed him to the older man who was drinking his tea by himself in the corner. The man, with ragged and twisted scars on his arms, said, "Come to ask about the mountain Lang, have you? If you want my advice, don't even think about going there." Naruto gazed up at him with steely eyes and said, "My friend has been stricken with consumption. They say that this mountain Lang is the only place to get the plant I can make the medicine from. I must go." The elder put down his cup, inhaled deeply, and pulled out a pipe. "I see." The man inhaled deeply of tobacco smoke and said, "Then my next pieces of advice are going to be critical. Bring a strong warrior, one who knows how to combat all manners of evil." "Evil?" inquired Naruto. "Yes, evil on that mountain are things that you've never even dreamed of before. These scars tell of that story." The man raised his arms. He took a book from behind him and said, "The beasts you'll see on that mountain are hideous in ways no one can ever hope to put into words. This is what I can tell you of the beasts you'll find, where the plant that we call mountain elixir is found, and what you should expect from the mountain itself." The elderly gentleman murmured, "If you return, then keep the book. I don't expect you to come back anyway." The guy stopped. "I can feel your power, and even you might not be strong enough to face the beasts and demons that dwell there." The man lit his pipe once more. Naruto paused, trying to come up with a name for himself, and said, "Sir, I know not what I should call you." The man laughed and said, "Just call me Alhazred. Now go. You have much reading to do. I'll pay for your tea." After turning up the volume and bowing, Naruto retired to his house for the night. He remarked on the man's dark complexion, which was unusual for someone who lived in the mountains, as well as his unusual name as he sat in his bedroom reading about the bizarre fungi and hideous animals that lived on the mountain of Leng. He repeated the name because it was so queer feeling that the blade in his hands would be covered in the blood of strange creatures after this mission. Naruto placed his hand on the sword by his side. After reading that book for the majority of the night, Naruto went to bed at 4 o'clock. Okin, the apothecary, instructed him to wake them at 10, after the coldest hours of the morning had passed. Because of his strange visions of demons, strange beasts, and a ruler from a long-gone civilization, Naruto was given an unusually long sleep. Shortly after waking up, Naruto stuffed his black rucksack with the scrolls that contained his camping gear. The peculiar book titled The Law of the Dead was rather thick and described strange and distant places, creatures whose descriptions he could not even comprehend, and treasures that would drive men to the ends of the world and beyond into uncharted territory. The Nine Tails hardly ever mentioned anything that Naruto saw, and Kyuubi hardly ever forgot anything. "I knew I've heard that name before. Alhazred is the man that was responsible for the sealing of Cthulhu, the 10-tailed beast." Naruto heard the loud laughter and asked, "10 tails? I thought you were the most powerful?" "Silly boy, Cthulhu is on a whole different level than I am. The 9-tailed beasts are each one piece of a key that would unleash Cthulhu, much like your seal. Our power combined would open a gateway of sorts to the realm in which Cthulhu is locked. That's why it's imperative that Akatsuki never get their hands on all of us." The fox had enticed Naruto and fright simultaneously. Naruto noticed the man's powerful hands, thickly corded neck, and ancient-looking sword beside him. Alhazred was the man that taught ninja how to use sealing techniques. He is in many ways stronger than he looks. The man was physically strong, and his speech was surprisingly youthful compared to the Sandame's slow, raspy speech. Alhazred was a man who spoke with clarity and precision, each word having the exact meaning he intended. It's said that he's the only man who's ever attained true immorality. "So then, you're saying that if I let the Akatsuki have you, then something even more terrible than you will be unleashed?" Naruto shuddered at the idea of something powerful enough to match him and his tenant. "Far worse. There are things in the world that could make that Hokage of yours look like a small, helpless child. Some of these beasts would even give you an IA run for our money. Pray that you never run into the being called Nyarlathotep." Even Cthulhu was wary of him. "It's much like the relationship that your friend Sasuke and you have. Neither of you is stronger, but just the same, if you were to fight seriously, the fight would come down to which one of you is more efficient and can go longer than the other." Naruto shouldered his pack, repositioned it to fit nicely over his coat, and put it down to wake Okin and Arima. "Anyway, we've got to find this plant, or Sasuke will die. I just got that bastard home." Shortly after, a man wearing a wakizashi, an old-looking sword on his belt, and a samurai outfit stopped Naruto and his charges as they were leaving the hotel. Naruto said, "Alhazred, wasn't it?" Alhazred was carrying a pack, albeit a small one, but it was still a pack. "I thought so, Akonoha Anbu, your demeanor was right, you make a good Ronin. Anyway, I'm coming with you. I can't have 4 lives perished just because I was lazy." Naruto knew the journey would be lengthy, but he didn't anticipate the 6-day trek just to reach the mountain. "Let's go. We won't be seeing the base of Leng for another 3 days, and then after that, we've got a 3-day climb to the caves where we can find our elusive plant." He was still feeling rushed because he had no idea how long he would be looking for the plant that lived in a cave. Additionally, it was impossible to predict how long they would be in the cave. As the 9-tails fox hoped to reassure the boy, he said, "That Uchiha is strong boy, he'll make it through this." With a, "I certainly hope so," tone, Naruto addressed his forever prisoner. Everyone sped up, they covered a good amount of ground, and they went 5 miles farther than they had anticipated on the second day. The whole group made their way into the mountain range that they had to traverse to get to Leng, the dreaded mountain mentioned in the Law of the Dead. Alhazred began, "Kitsune, regarding the book, Okin and Arima had already fallen asleep when they were seated around the campfire. Naruto arched his brows under his mask and said, "You bear one of the nine-tailed beasts, don't you?" "In the Law of the Dead," Naruto said, "I thought so. Your aura says so. I have to tell you. There's a demon that dwells upon Leng that I want you to avoid at all costs. They call him the Crawling Chaos, and he's composed of these black tentacles, eyes as red as blood, and teeth white as alabaster and hard as quartz." Naruto had read about the dark beast. A sketch of the demon had been made. "If we do run into the beast, let me take care of him." Naruto pointed to the sword next to the man and said, "That sword, it looks to be very old. May I ask of the origins of it?" With a laugh, the man picked up the sword and drew it. The blade had the shape of a katana, but it was 3 times thicker and twice as wide. Its hilt was shaped like a manji, a symbol of good fortune and prosperity, and it was matte black in color. The handle was cord-wrapped and terminated with a round, polished, and gleaming quartz stone. Soul Splitter was the name of the blade. Naruto shuddered when he heard the name Nyarlathotep. The sword was found in a temple to some foreign god, they called Nyarlathotep. The Nine Tails said that Nyarlathotep was the only being to ever best Cthulhu in combat. Nyarlathotep is indeed a strong being, but I know nothing of his battle with Cthulhu. This sword was said to be the blade that destroyed the god. Alhazred took out the weapon. The elder man clarified that the Shoggoth were large, gelatinous creatures that, like white blood cells, ate and crushed their prey. "I only hope that we don't run into the Shoggoth. Swords and other blades don't work on them. According to legend, they were once slaves to the Elder Ones but rebelled at that time. No one knew where they were. Some were said to have gone back to the sea, where their homes were. Others were said to have made deep caves their homes. Still others were frozen in Arctic weather and glaciers. But of all the weird creations I laid eyes on, the ones called Migo were the worst, the least formidable, but the most terrible to see. According to the Law of the Dead, Migo were enormous, insect-like beings with 6 crab-like claws and a large, lizard-like tail that bent at all joints away from the head. It had 2 parallel rows of 4 fins on its back. 2 hideous fleshy wings rested above those fins that appeared to be useless. The monstrosity had a head that looked like the head of a centipede. There were antennae all over its head and face, and 3 eyes on its face. Alhazred added that its joints were the only soft spots on its tough skin, which was as hard as a clam's shell. Kyuubi laughed and said, "He's telling you to dismember these things." As he took out his pipe, Alhazred grinned and said, "They're fearsome fighters, but they're not massive, perhaps about 5 foot in length, maybe more." In addition to additional stories that were all contained in the strange book that Naruto now carried with him, the explanation of various things that were rumored to lurk in the Leng caves continued into the night. Strange creatures with odd proportions were depicted in the drawings. The drawing of Cthulhu depicted a large beast on 2 legs with arms as thick as enormous trees, great membranous wings spreading from its back, and what appeared to be a squid-like head with countless tentacles. Many of the objects depicted were strikingly similar to marine life and insects. Alhazred explained that the great claws on its fingers and toes were made to pierce and cut. A small-looking person appeared next to the drawing of Cthulhu. The person appeared around what Naruto thought would be Cthulhu's ankle, indicating that the beast would be taller than 50 feet. It was a big thing indeed, though I feel I might have gotten the scale slightly off. I'd say it was around 40 feet tall, give or take. I had no accurate measuring tool at the time. Alhazred's pipe was leaking smoke. Naruto paused, then said, "But 40 feet is quite some height to aspire to. The Kyuubi tells me that you're immortal, and that you taught ninja how to seal." Alhazred gave a nod. "I'm not quite immortal. I won't die of natural causes, and because of that, I've mastered both great knowledge as well as physical prowess. I'm 442 years old if you must know. I sealed Cthulhu when I was 59, and taught the first sealing techniques at 97. The ninja villages came to be not much longer after. I think it was 40 years. So you really are immortal? Life must get boring after a while." "Never. I've traveled to realms of both demonic and heavenly beings, seen the bottom of the ocean, which is where I came across a sleeping Cthulhu, but was too fearful to confront it. I later got that blessing shortly after I found the Soul Splitter in Nyarlathotep's temple." "Where is this temple?" Alhazred asked with a low-key but profound laugh. "It no longer exists, but its ruins are in the underworld. It's a place I'd suggest you never go. Terribly hot." This time, Naruto chuckled. "Say, I'm tired of this Iwa place. They're too damn restricting on what I bring into their walls. What say you that I come to Konoha with you?" There was silence for several minutes after that. In theory, Konoha was open to civilians, and a warrior who appeared to have encountered so many odd creatures would undoubtedly have more artifacts with eldritch roots. He was the only teacher of all things seals, but what else could Konoha possibly learn from him? The list included his sword, vast knowledge, and aromatic tobacco. Although Naruto's tone sounded confident, he was secretly worried about Tsunade's reaction to the man who was 8 times her age. "I'll have to talk to our Hokage, but I'm sure that we could find something for you to do. It shouldn't be hard, there's always something to do around the village. I've got many skills, not just swordsmanship and the hunting of foreign beasts." Even though Naruto knew they would only be sleeping for 3 hours, he said, "No matter, let's get some sleep before the sun rises. After all, any sleep was better than none." As the morning drew near, they resumed their journey toward the feared mountain Leng. The 4 travelers were already trudging through deep snow when the snow started to fall this time. Konoha Sasuke's health had remained largely unchanged. He was still ill and coughing, and blood frequently reached his mouth through his cough. Tamari was out getting tea for Sasuke, who preferred green tea, which was supposed to have healing qualities, particularly for respiratory ailments. Sakura sat beside him, making him as comfortable as possible. Many of the soldiers in the village as well as Uchiha's former teammates were aware of his illness when he heard it. Rock Lee was carrying groceries on his way home. He recognized the man seated at a tea stand as a Junin. Lee went up to the man, took his shirt, and threw him to the hard dirt, saying, "That Uchiha is sick with consumption. Sounds like we'll finally be rid of that damn Uchiha family." "Don't you dare speak slander of him," the man said, getting to his feet. "Sasuke is an honorable man." The iron fist smashed the man's nose with such force that he was sent rolling, saying, "I'll say what I want about whomever I please, you pathetic excuse for a ninja." Lee sensed the man's friend and ducked as a sword went straight through where his neck should have been, saying, "You are the pathetic excuse for a ninja, with no honor." After a right cross and an elbow to the sternum, the man was lying flat on his back. Unconscious, he approached the man who was still upright, seized his hair, and yanked him to his feet before slamming him to the ground with a vicious blow. He stopped when he saw the blood he had drawn. "What's going on here?" A trio of Enbu showed up. Lee described the circumstances. "I see, it's unfortunate that these men can't be prosecuted. Sasuke was always a great ninja. He is still a great ninja. Naruto is going to the mountain of Leng in northern Iwa to get a plant that can cure Sasuke's consumption. Then he will return to his previous strength and restore the honor of the Uchiha clan. Lee, your friends are very fortunate to have you. These 2 will be taken to the hospital and warned to be careful what they say, and to whom they say it." Lee picked up his groceries and bowed, saying, "Thank you, Neko-san." Outside of Sasuke and Naruto's lives, the consumption was causing trouble, but the Uchiha was a well-liked man in the village and was even labeled a traitor at the moment. Sasuke was fighting for his life, and Naruto was battling the hostile mountain elements. After 3 days of travel, the miserable mountain Leng was in front of Naruto, Arima, Okin, and Alhazred. Since it was a clear day and one could see for miles, a sizable plateau covered the summit. The plateau itself was at the top of a fairly lengthy hike that would take most climbers a day to complete. It would take half a day, maybe 3/4 of a day, to those who stood in front of the mountains, the only people for miles around. Before packing up and heading higher, they set up camp at the mountain's base and remained there until dawn. Okin stood farthest back, Naruto in front of Arima, and Alhazred behind him. Crevices divided the landscape, and the ground was oddly devoid of snow, as though it had been swept into big mounds at random times. Alhazred, who knew a great deal about the mountain Leng and many other forbidden places around the world, said, "The cave we're searching for is about 200 feet short of the summit." Okin felt nervous. The mountain didn't feel quite right, and he thought someone was watching him. He questioned why he felt this way, as he was never one to focus too much on his surroundings. From the cracks surrounding him, it appeared as though 100 pairs of eyes were observing him. Naruto's senses were overloaded, and he perceived things in front of him, beneath him, and everywhere else. The mountain appeared to be alive, its very soul projecting fear onto anyone who could sense it. Naruto sensed Okin's fear behind him. He heard the man jump and say, "Okin." The Anbu ninja was somewhat correct when they said, "It's fine, the mountain has its own presence. It seems nothing will be jumping from the snow to harm you." Instead, a huge amorphous blob with tendrils that resembled pseudopodia exploded from the crevice they were walking over and grabbed hold of Okin's enormous trunk. Naruto started to run through the hand signals. On a much smaller scale, fire arts. Fireball was a jutsu that was strikingly similar to the Uchiha's notorious grand fireball technique, with a sizzling sound and the stench of burning flesh. The fire, which was more akin to the size of a large dog, struck the amorphous creature. He was right, Okin. Nothing came from the snow, instead it jumped from the crevice. Alhazred was beaming. "That's a Shoggoth, definitely would have put you in a world of hurt." He approached the big, flaming mass of material that looked like flesh. The group proceeded, the stench of charred flesh still lingering in their nostrils for almost a mile, saying, There's definitely going to be more of them, we need to be more careful. Half a day later, a basic camp consisting of 2 tents and a fire pit was being constructed. The camp was situated at the base of the enormous plateau, which appeared to have a footpath that wound up the side and was about 1.5 feet wide. Naruto embraced the warmth as he sat close to the fire in the mountains. Temperatures dropped to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, which is among the coldest that humans can endure for a long period of time. All 4 of them could stay warm around the fire because it was so big. Naruto felt more resolved than ever to save his friend's life as he gazed into the chilly, pitch-black night. Because he was the only person assigned to the mission, he was the only one on watch. It was easy to stay up for days at a time. His nerves would deteriorate, his reflexes would become sluggish, and his sword would slow as he ascended higher, the cliffs becoming more treacherous and the beasts more dangerous. When Alhazred woke up, Naruto knew he could take a quick nap, which he was using to direct their mission. This man is strangely helpful, don't you think? He doesn't want to see Cthulhu rise again. In my opinion, I would hate for my village to be destroyed by such a damned beast. The fox said, "You mean like I did?" With a tone that was equal parts proud and offended. "I won't say I don't regret it, but I can't say I do either. To be honest, I also regret having you sealed inside of me. However, I can't say that I enjoy it either." Suddenly, Naruto became aware of a dark presence. Actually he saw almost a dozen winged and gaunt forms when he looked around. Instead of typical teeth and nails, the humanoid forms all had claws and sharp fangs. Their bodies were covered in dark, black skin. They were known as the Dark Young. With his knives already drawn, Naruto stood up. The first of the Dark Young was slashed through the throat in a sudden movement. The other 9 lunged, but Naruto was able to get away because of the chaos created by the 9 bodies trying to pile on top of one another. Under his mask, Naruto grinned and said, "Clearly you guys aren't very smart." He jumped over one of the beasts and landed behind it. After spotting 2 of them lunge at him, he turned and kicked it in the head, crushing its bones under Naruto's metal shin armor. He knocked the other attacker away with a push kick and a step forward. One head rolled, followed by another step forward and a knife slash. Then he saw that 3 of the black creatures had soared into the air. Kunai flew too slowly to strike them in the air, and he lacked a bow to shoot them down. After concentrating on the 3 on the ground, Naruto threw both of his knives, striking 2 of the Dark Young before he could reach the third. His sword turned and sliced a beast's arm from the sky. The third ground-born attacker tried to attack their meal by using the loss of limb of one of their comrades as a distraction. Without delay, Naruto pressed the heel of his boot into the beast's face. After removing his knives from the faces of 2 animals, he leapt into the air and confronted his attacker directly, driving his blades into the back of the animal as he struck it. The mess of wings, limbs, and steel struck the floor. The grotesque beast's jaw was smashed by the Anbu ninja's elbow. He got to his feet and slammed his boot into the victim's face. He caught the beast's wrist before the ivory claws ripped his mask from his face as the last of the Dark Young snatched him by the side and slammed him to the ground. Naruto punched upward, using the ground to support himself, and his fist struck a fairly sturdy jaw. The bones of the beast's neck snapped together, pushing the beast off its perch on top of him. Naruto got to his feet. 10 bodies of a beast that didn't exist were scattered around their camp. Naruto sheathed the weapons, gathered his blades, and observed the foul stench coming from the corpses, which were decomposing more quickly than anything he had ever seen. The 10 beasts' bodies completely decomposed in a few short minutes. Naruto only uttered the word, "strange," before heading back to his post to keep an eye out for additional adversaries. To smoke his pipe, Alhazred came out of his tent. He noticed Naruto sitting where he had been. Alhazred sat down and said, "Sounded like you had a bit of a scuffle before. Go to sleep, and when the other 2 wake up an hour after dawn, I'll wake you up." Alhazred's yell roused Naruto, who was outside in a matter of seconds and discovered nothing amiss. As he boiled some snow to make tea and smoked his pipe, Alhazred said, "Good, I figured that would wake you up." Following a brief breakfast, the 4 travelers proceeded up the mountain trail, the winding, narrow path that led them all the way to the summit of the plateau. They were able to avoid hypothermia thanks to their movement and a canteen full of an odd tea that Alhazred had prepared. "Kitsune, how many Dark Young were present when you fought them?" There was a slight edge in Alhazred's voice as he asked. Naruto replied, "There was 10. Why?" The Dark Young typically travel in groups of 15 to 20 people because they only emerge at night. They have been dubbed night gaunts, Alhazred said, almost deliberately, as though every word had been prepared before he spoke it. "They'll probably be following us, since you definitely have the scent of their clan on you. I killed 10 yesterday, 5 or 10 more won't be a problem. I'm sure they're bringing friends. One night gaunt will follow if it spots another tracking game," the old man said. "You and I will sleep in shifts tonight, you taking the second half of the night. This continues until there are dozens of them. We're gonna get that plant for your friend. come hell or high water. Alhazred's words were a small consolation to everyone present. Since that's when they came last night, he said, observing Okin and Arima's terrified expressions. Naruto was about to take the second watch, watching the fire while eating his simple dinner, when he heard a noise. The hike up the side of the plateau continued all day until nightfall. Have you heard that, Alhazred? Picking up his sword, Naruto said, I think we've got company. You too? He gestured to Arima and Okin, telling them to enter their tent if any of them attempt to enter, yell. Then a great beast with black skin, red eyes, and claws as dark as its skin appeared, accompanied by lightning and thunder. Without thinking, Naruto started to hand seal, saying, Nine Tails Phantom. Release. The red mist quickly engulfed him. Behind him, the mist took the shape of a fox, and 9 ethereal tails formed. Alhazred drew his sword, sensing 100 distinct, equally evil presences. Well, I wish I could do that. Well, I guess that I'm on my own then. With his hands shaped like the Kyuubi's paws, Naruto lunged at the dark beast. The paws landed on the animal, and the claws tore through the skin like paper. After landing on his hands and knees, Naruto swung his 9 tails at the unnamed beast. As dozens of night gaunts surrounded him, Alhazred sighed and, in a sudden burst of movement that produced a sonic boom, he sliced through one body, then another, and then a third before a single heartbeat occurred in any of the bodies. He threw his sword as he watched several take off. He completed his jutsu before the sword hit him, and a huge fireball ignited. A dozen night gaunts in the air. Leaping forward, he grabbed one of the dark young and swung it at another, defeating it while drawing his sword from a third. As the great dark beast fell to the ground, defeated, Naruto's aura flared and it released the odor of burning flesh. Naruto didn't stop there. He turned and leapt into the battle, then used his last move to flare his aura once more. Alhazred put his sword away, took a seat, and watched as Naruto started to release the energy that had been bound in the shape of a 9-tailed beast. Naruto rolled his shoulders and laughed, saying, Damn, I thought I was fast. I'll be hard-pressed to stay awake all night now. Alhazred took out his pipe and said, I'll take watch, you get your sleep. You did good, Naruto. The bigger beast was a different type of dark young, a much stronger kind. Naruto crawled into his sleeping bag and ducked inside his tent, saying, Well, I'm going to sleep. Wake me up if we have any more guests.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.